across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, there you are. Where have I been? I've been on holiday and I'm back. So it's good to be back. Let's get going. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be with you for 3 thoroughly thrilling hours of news, views and topical debate all the way to 10 o'clock. Get involved, get on the phone and call me on 03444991000, or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I promise to play your message out. It's Monday, April the 28th. Here's what's coming up. Proving that there are pathetic depths below which our squirming Prime Minister is fully prepared to sink, today our dear leader promised us yet another crackdown on migration. Some nonsense about closing a loophole in graduate student visas that you just know won't make a blind bit of difference, like everything else he does about the migrant crisis. But with the widely predicted humiliation of reform thrashing Labour in Thursday's local elections looming, clearly old Twotier decided he had to say something. Will this guy ever realise he has to do a lot more than performative headline hunting to solve the migrant crisis? Will he admit that his ludicrous smash the people smuggling gang strategy is a sick national joke? 03444991000. In other news, Met Police Union Chief Rick Pryor has been sacked by the Police Federation for telling Talk that rank-and-file officers are reluctant to confront ethnic suspects for fear of vexatious racism complaints that, if subsequently backed by the Independent Office of Police Complaints Watchdog, could cost them their jobs. Did Mr. Pryor just make this up? If not, why the hell has he been dismissed? I think most coppers will tell you he's telling the truth. Why has he been sacked for telling the truth? 03444991000. Meanwhile, the pro-Palestinian protests continue apace after a pair of idiots tried to disrupt the London Marathon with a spot of red paint. Why do these dismal demonstrations continue apace in all their lack of glory? Is it because you don't see coppers policing these marches? Is it because illegal chants about jihad and from the river to the sea are simply allowed by left-wing rozzers? 03444991000. Also tonight, the stupefying spectacle of the BBC marking its own homework again, spending a fortune of licence fee payers' money on a management consultant's review of how the disastrous state broadcaster can improve its horrible handling of wrongdoing by staff, especially high-profile presenters like paedophile news anchor Hugh Edwards, imperiously announcing that the Beeb does not have a toxic culture but must do better. Really? Only the BBC could conclude that the BBC does not have a toxic culture. It so does. And yet our state broadcaster manages this stunning feat of epic self-delusion, convincing itself that it does not have a toxic culture. Are you kidding? Hugh Edwards, Greg, what's his name from the Greg Wallace? I forgot his name there for a second. From the from MasterChef, also of course Strictly Come Dancing, as I say, plus so many other scandals, the Gary Lineker affair, and so on and so forth. The BBC says it does not have a toxic culture. Are they kidding us? How dare they tell us that? How dare they take our money and then in a self-satisfied way say everything's all right? We could be a bit better, but everything's fine. Really? 03444991000. Plus, in an hour's time, I'll be joined by the great Sharon Davis, who would like to point out that the London Marathon broke the law. This mass run for charity let men who pretend to be women race against real women. Why were the organisers allowed to ride roughshod over the Supreme Court's recent historic ruling on biological sex? And why is Boy George accusing women's rights campaigner J.K. Rowling of hating men? At least she didn't handcuff a guy to a wall and beat him with a metal chain, eh, George? 03444991000. And also the shocking waste of the 1,300 Quango staff on more than £100,000 a year, with 350 Quango buses earning more than the Prime Minister's salary of 172,153 quid. Whatever happened to Labour's pledge to build a bonfire of the Quangos? Couldn't they light it? 03444991000. Plus, more than 1,000 asylum seekers have been waiting for a decision to stay here, whether or not they can stay here, for more than 10 years. 10 years! Why are these people allowed to constantly appeal against their refusals? What is the point of rejecting migrants if they can just lodge immediate appeals ad infinitum? And finally, Meghan's podcast plummets out of the top 100, dropping way below a rival podcast about how to get to sleep. Here's how to get to sleep. Listen to Confessions of a Female Founder, hosted by Meghan Markle. Guaranteed deep unconsciousness within seconds. All that and so much more, so don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Monday night together. And I'm going to start the week unusually because Russell Quirk is away this week, but we've got super sub, the excellent Talk International editor Isabel Oakeshott standing by. In fact, she joins me right now. Hi, Isabel.
Hi. Well, there's no danger of anyone listening to you falling asleep, is there? It's more the risk is that they will get into a boiling rage at all this absolute nonsense that is being imposed on us by this completely useless government. Where are we going to begin? It
is strange that, I was away last week down in Cornwall, and I tuned in now and again to Talk. I can't pretend I did it all the time, but I did know every time, something was being reported on that made me furious. So what you're going to get today is 7 days of pent-up rage. I'm going to be even angrier than normal. Well, let's kick off with our favourite, like the touch paper and retire issue, the Migrant Crisis. Now, first of all, over the weekend, there was this extraordinary announcement that what Keir Starmer is now doing, if you like, infusing our entire nation with migrants and asylum seekers. So in the past, various communities would complain with some justification, our local hotel has just been entirely taken over by migrant seekers, by asylum seekers. Then people started to say, well, there's these other accommodation centres. They've now moved into my street. Well, now they've moved next door. So literally, asylum seekers are going to be given houses to rent all over the country. No doubt we will pay the rent. So far from cutting back, Starmer said, I'll cut back on hotels, I'll cut back on accommodation centres, there'll be much less need for accommodation as we solve the migrant crisis. Hotels, he's commandeering more and more. Accommodation centres, he's trying to set more and more up, and now he's renting houses all over the country. This is out of control, isn't it?
Well, the only thing we should be cutting back on is the actual number of illegal immigrants who are coming to the country. Never mind cutting back on this accommodation or that accommodation. If you keep allowing them to pour across the channel, and it's not even exaggerating to say that. I mean, we are now entering the summer months, heat wave, better conditions for making those crossings. We are going to have days where close to 1,000 come in a single day. Perhaps we'll even break through that barrier, as I think we have in the past in the summer. So, just continuing to cater for more people is not an answer to the problem. And this is going to cause such resentment in more communities. I mean, I've looked at the list of places up and down the country where the contractors who are being paid vast fortunes to secure private accommodation for these asylum seekers are looking, and it's just in so many parts of the UK, and many of them look to me pretty unsuitable areas. You've got places like Rutland. It's not an obvious place to send a bunch of illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
I don't know when this government is going to wake up and realise the only place to send them is either back where they came from or into a supermax detention centre.
And I tell you what's interesting is, I mean, hardly anywhere is now escaping this ongoing invasion of illegal foreigners, which that's basically what they are, these asylum seekers.
Yeah.
We're going to do a story later in the show, actually. Won't bother you with it. But there are 1,096 asylum seekers in this country whose applications were first filed more than 10 years ago. They've been here for over
I am
a
really
decade.
bothered. I am bothered. You know, you
I
said
said I'm not going to bother you with it because we're going to
I
do.
know.
But you see, but I mean, 1,096, more than 1,000 asylum seekers first applied to stay in this country more than 10 years ago, and their applications continue. What we've got to do. What is a clear and present ridiculous situation is, if I'm a migrant, I'm an asylum seeker, I come here, I apply to be granted asylum, to be allowed to stay. It goes to court, I fail. So you think, well, all right, well, I'll be out of the country now. No. I just appeal and I stay. That appeal is heard. I fail. Well, now surely I'll be kicked out of the country. No. I'll just appeal again, and I'll keep on appealing until they allow me to stay. That is what's happening. There is no limit on the amount of times these people can appeal. So it's literally pointless refusing them their applications, because they'll just appeal again. It's a complete mess. And in the past, shall we say, a lovely millionaires town like Datchet near Windsor, very, very plush, very wealthy kind of area, that would have escaped the scourge of asylum seekers, principally because that used to be David Cameron's constituency, didn't it? Well, now that Datchet has got as much problems as anywhere else. There's a lovely hotel in the middle of it, but they've filled it with migrants. People trying to sell their £5 million properties just can't get rid of them anymore. So it's not just areas that you might imagine would be affected by asylum seekers, shall we say, the more run-down areas, cities, and so on and so forth. It's very nice areas as well, areas full of multi-million pounds homes. So the entire country is getting infused with asylum seekers. The entire nation is now changing because of this problem that the damn Prime Minister is doing absolutely nothing about. The fact that he's doing nothing is an absolute disgrace.
It's a complete disaster. I've just been racking my brains as to who was the MP for Datchet that you're thinking of for that area, because it certainly wasn't Cameron.
No, he lived there, didn't he? Didn't he have a house there?
Cameron was the MP for Witney.
Okay.
I know that because I'm also in that constituency, and actually Witney has got its fair share. It definitely has at least one migrant hotel, and Witney is a classic kind of lovely edge of the Cotswolds market town. This is everywhere now, and if it's not near you already, then it's coming near you very soon, and it's changing the face of our country. And picking up on what you said about these endless appeals, that's really simple. I think you just introduce a rule whereby either it's a first strike and you're out. You failed your claim and you're deported within, let's say, a week, or you're allowed one appeal. I mean, I know I'd probably opt for the no appeal thing, but in a nod to the bleeding hearts of the nation, we could perhaps allow one appeal, and then that's it. You're out. You just cannot have a system where people are allowed to appeal again and again and again and again. guess who's paying for all those appeals? It's not the asylum seekers or the failed illegal immigrants.
And what about Starmer today? I mean, we have to tread fairly carefully here, but many experts, political commentators are predicting that Reform UK could have a very good day at the local elections on Thursday. And you get the feeling with this announcement that Starmer suddenly made today, something about a crackdown on migration. Oh, another one, Keir, thank you very much. And some old claptrap about closing the loophole for graduate student visas and so on and so forth. I mean, quite clearly a desperate bid to say, oh, vote Labour because, you know, we'll certainly solve this migrant crisis. But that announcement just proves how desperate he is and how he's got no idea how to solve it. I mean, this smash the gangs strategy is now, as I said in my monologue, it is a sick national joke. I mean, they're not smashing any gangs. They haven't caught anyone. It's pathetic. Stop the migrants, Keir. Otherwise, you will never solve this problem.
It'll be so interesting to see how things play out at the end of the week. As you say, there are elections coming up. We don't need to get into the party politics of it. Suffice to say that this announcement today, this crackdown, it's a non-announcement, really. I mean, it's tinkering around the edges in a way that no one's going to notice, is obviously a kind of cry for help from Downing Street.
Cry for help.
Yeah,
exactly.
A cry for help from, please, someone vote for us, you know, because really, you know, we're just going to try and convince you that we're on top of this problem. I mean, come on, who's going to fall for that? I don't think so. I really don't. It's desperate stuff. If they'd stood up there and said something really radical, like my fine policy of building a supermax jail for illegal immigrants, then I'd have listened. And then I think the nation might have been like, oh, wow, you're actually building you're doing something tangible about this. But just standing there going, yeah, we're going to crack down, I'm going to change some student visa stuff. Come on. Exactly
right. And by the way, no one will have failed to notice that the weather is pretty clement today, to say the least. And the forecast is for a very hot, calm week down on the English Channel near Dover and Folkestone and around there. So I think we can predict that there may be quite a number of migrants coming over on small boats this week. We're standing now at around about 8,300 so far this year, and that number is expected to pass the 10,000 mark possibly this week. That is 40% higher in terms of arrivals, illegal arrivals, 40% above previous records, 40% higher than ever before. I mean, this is, we talk about the migrant crisis. With these kind of numbers, we're going to find out exactly what a crisis means, because this is unsustainable.
It is a complete and utter disaster. It's a disaster for the Labour Party. I don't much care about that. But more importantly, it's a disaster for our country. Every single one of those people, yes, they're humans. And yes, they may have come from trouble spots. I'm sure that the vast majority have come from countries that aren't nearly as nice as Britain. But they each come with a massive price tag for the British taxpayer. You might just as well hang, I'm making this figure up, but, £1 million attached to each one, because over the course of a number of years, without a doubt, they will cost £1 million each on average, because they are not going to be net contributors for a very, very long time. So look, this is the impact on communities, the impact on public services, the impact on the NHS, on and on and on it goes. And in particular, of course, on housing. And it's a disaster. It just is.
Yeah, and you wait. Once they start sort of forcing migrants into people's next door neighbours, people start realising their next door neighbours are Syrians who can't speak English, etc., etc. Nothing against them, but that is going to cause social problems. It really, really is. And Starmer has completely lost his grip here, and it's extremely worrying. When we come back, Isabel, we're going to talk about a guy called Rick Pryor. He's the Met Police's union chief, who gave an interview to Alex Phillips here on Talk. And he said that London cops are reluctant to challenge ethnic suspects in case they end up in a racism complaint, a complaint that those kind of complaints are often backed up by the Police Complaints Commission. Therefore, coppers are worried about confronting people of ethnic origin because they think it might cost them their careers. This is what he said. We'll play that later. But he's been sacked for saying that. And what I'd like to talk to you about is worrying syndrome in Starmer's Britain. It is this staring down the truth and saying it's not true. Rick Pryor, I think if you ask any copper in Britain, will tell you he's speaking the truth, and yet he's been fired for that. And it's just like Keir Starmer with two-tier justice. You know, Keir, what are we going to do about two-tier justice? Oh, it doesn't exist. I mean, you can't just deny the truth. It's a problem here. And Rick Pryor, who seems like he's a career officer, he has suffered because of this. We'll talk about that after the break, so stick around.
In the CAST report, it was found that about 1/3 of children who presented themselves at the Tavistock Gender Clinic had autism or some other neurodivergent condition. So that was there and that was known, but there was an appalling lack of curiosity. Rather than say, is this just an outworking of the child's neurodiverse behaviour, neurodiverse condition, clinicians seem to think, well, it just means they're trans, and move forwards without asking the right questions.
Now, across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Isabel, back in September, a guy called Rick Pryor, who's essentially the union rep of 30,000 London police officers. He's the Met Police's union rep, chairman of what they call the Police Federation, the police union. He voiced his concern, a very real concern, that more and more officers around the capital, but I suspect around the country as well, are reluctant to be proactive, to confront, to deal with, to arrest suspects of ethnic origin, suspects of colour, because they fear that they could end up in a vexatious racism complaint, and that the police watchdog, the Independent Office for Police Conduct, has a bit of a track record of not backing serving coppers. So if they get one of these vexatious complaints, that no matter how flimsy, is sustained by the IOPC, they essentially lose their careers. They lose their jobs, possibly. So rather than do that, they back off. That's what Rick was saying. Well, this is what he said when he talked to Alex last September. Let's have a quick listen.
Do your officers now worry about arresting people like this for fears of being accused of racism?
Yes, they do. And they are also hesitant about involving themselves off duty if they see antisocial behaviour, for instance, people with their feet on the seats on trains, because they think they won't be supported if they intervene. This is a marked change since I joined the police service 28 and a half years ago. We've not only when we had a warrant card in our pocket, we felt obliged to intervene in those type of situations. And now officers more than likely wouldn't for fear of the consequence of doing so.
So he gave interviews to other media outlets as well, Isabel. I mean, what are the police federations saying? That he's lying? I mean, you talk to any coppers, current or past, and they'll tell you that this is a problem. This is a serious problem. And you can just tell that it's authentic. And yet he's been sacked. Why?
I mean, what that is downright cowardly on the part of the organisation. They seem unable to face up to the truth, and so they're shooting the messenger. And this is such an ugly part of our institutions now, you know, that I get so many emails from people, including from inside the police, by the way, they're so desperate to reveal things, and yet they're terrified that they'll lose their job if they're even seen remotely engaging with anybody about anything that goes on behind closed doors. And it's awful. How do any of our services get better as a result of that type of fear and secrecy? It's right the way through the NHS, by the way. You know, the terror of speaking out about anything. It's awful, really, that for example, eminent doctors are not able to speak out about what goes on, things they don't like and things that really worry them, perhaps even dangerous things that go on in their own hospitals. They can't speak out because they would simply be fired. I really hope that Mr. Pryor is somehow comes up with somebody gives him an amazing job offer to make up for what he's suffered, because it is disgraceful that he should have been sacked for this.
It really is. And this is a career officer. I believe he worked in the Royal Protection Service for a while. But he's a career officer. He's been a copper for more than 30 years. You know, stepped forward to represent his fellow officers. And then the union treat him like this. As I say, what are they suggesting? That he just stood up and made this up? That he's lying? I don't believe he's lying for a second. Ask any copper. This is a serious problem. And I think it's a serious problem in Starmer's Britain, that this is what we're doing more and more about clear and present serious problems. In Starmer's mode, we just act like they're not happening. What about, was it 2 weeks ago, the ludicrous MPs on the pathetic Home Affairs Committee staring the nation in the face and telling us that following the blatant two-tier approach to the summer riots, Southport and all that, there was no evidence whatsoever of two-tier policing or two-tier justice. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous.
It's completely and utterly gaslighting the population. It's obvious that there was two-tier policing. You know, you and I could sit here and rattle off half a dozen examples of that having happened, and it links into what Mr. Pryor was saying. There is two-tier policing for the very reason that officers are terrified of being hit with a vexatious claim. And we've seen these vexatious claims made time and again. You know, it's the easiest thing in the world just to start bleating that you're a victim of racism or this or that or the other. Of course, sometimes people genuinely are. I'm not saying not sometimes cases of appalling behaviour, particularly by, you know, the wrong type of police officers. But I understand why many good and dutiful and honourable officers are afraid of the way that they may be themselves become the victim of something totally spurious if they try to do their job properly. It's appalling. Exactly right. And I mean, also we lose a lot of very good officers like this who just don't want to put up with this kind of pressure. The IOPC, Independent Office for Police Conduct, has got a bit of a bad reputation for not backing officers but backing the complainants, hence the increasing fear among coppers that if they get on the wrong end of some kind of racism complaint, they're screwed, they're finished, no chance, you know, and that is not good. Rick Pryor says that he feels like he's living in North Korea, and he's calling for a judicial review on what he's talking about and what has happened to him, and I hope he damn well gets it. Honestly, this is supposed to be the union that represents officers. This guy has spoken up for serving rank and file officers on the front line, and the union has sacked him. Unbelievable. It is disgusting, and I hope the one thing he absolutely must not do is shut up. He is going to now have to lean into this outrage and make a campaign of it, because he can turn some bad into at least some kind of positive by highlighting what a disgrace that is, what's happened to him, and trying to play a part in changing the culture. And I can quite understand if he doesn't feel like doing that right now, but I'm heartened to hear that he's going to try and get some kind of overturning of this. It's actually unbelievable, isn't it? It's unbelievable. It's Starmer's Britain for you, a weird place, an increasingly weird place. Next up, Isabel, we're going to talk about, your operation has been out on the streets of Britain, and we've got some interesting footage. We're going to talk about the ongoing pro-Palestine protests and what happened on Tower Bridge during the London Marathon. So that next, stay tuned, folks.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakshott. Isabel, let's talk about protests. The pro-Palestine protests continue apace. They're still snaking through every city in the country most weekends. And the policing of these demonstrations is, shall we say, standoffish. They don't get too involved. I've seen them myself. They perennially chant, you know, from the river to the sea, jihad, and so on and so on. These are illegal. It's illegal to say from the river to the sea. It's illegal to shout jihad. They call for the destruction of the Jewish nation, the annihilation of Israel, and so on and so. But the police say, oh, we don't want to cause trouble, so they let it happen. Now, you've got some footage of one of these protests over the weekend. But before we get to that, there was, of course, during the London Marathon yesterday, the London Bridge incident. And it just makes you wonder why these pathetic people continue. But let's have a quick look at what happened on Tower Bridge yesterday.
The UK Labour government is complicit in enabling a genocide in Palestine. We continue to provide arms to Israel. The genocidal state of Israel. We are breaking UK domestic law and international law by supplying Israel with arms. Stop the genocide. Stop arming Israel.
Oh, shut up. I mean, the police were on those pair of idiots fairly quickly, to be fair. And they'll end up in the court, probably get about 50 quid fine or something. I mean, two things I want to say about that is, you know, why do these people continue? I mean, that was barely worth blinking about, was it? I mean, you know, nobody's that bothered, and yet they carry on. It's all about them, isn't it? So these protests, nobody pays any attention to them at all, except the people protesting. Let's have a look at what you or your colleague filmed over the weekend. Again, more evidence that these people, I mean, they sure know how to waste their own time. Have a look at this.
You're intimidating. You're intimidating.
You are causing me alarm and distress.
What?
Alarm and distress.
You people are ridiculous.
Alarm and distress. Alarm and distress. Alarm and distress. White supremacy. Baby butcher. Alarm and distress. Alarm and distress.
Baby butcher. Baby butcher. Baby butcher. Fascist. Baby killer. Fascist. Baby butcher.
That woman was shouting that that guy was causing her some. I didn't quite catch what she was saying.
He was shouting,
alarm and distress. You're going to be alarm and distress. Yeah, all right, we got it.
yeah, I mean, there were subtitles on that video. They were a bit blurry from what I could see. I don't know whether they were blurry to our viewers, but for those that couldn't see that properly, this was a pro-Palestine protest outside the US Embassy on Friday night, and these protesters were incredibly aggressive. My colleague, as you put it there, I'm going to call him the Watchman. He's had a good eye on things. Was down there just to see what was going on, and they basically turned on him. They didn't like anyone monitoring how they were behaving, and they became extremely aggressive and started pursuing him with their mobile phone, shouting, "You're causing me alarm and distress," which is just complete nonsense. Repeating the same phrase, alarm and distress.
Alarm and distress. Yeah, and so what?
I mean, I think that just said to me these people are completely bonkers, but that would be to be kind, in my honest opinion, because what you also had in the background there was at least one person shouting that my colleague there is a
baby killer
and a white supremacist. I mean, since when is that okay? I mean,
It's not.
is very wrong with these pro-Palestinian fanatics, because that's what that behaviour was. It was fanatical, and I don't think that our streets should be despoiled by this week in, week out. It's wrong.
Exactly right. And by the way, your operative, your colleague, must be complimented, as must you, because it was him that filmed those squatters, those migrant squatters, hurling stones at him in Paddington in West London, underneath the freeway, the flyover there. And subsequent to Talk's exclusive that you brought to the station and that you discussed with Alex Phillips last week while she was so brilliantly standing in for me. I'm never around when the good stories break. But seriously, subsequent to that, mysteriously, suddenly, those migrants were cleared out. The authorities, the police turned up and got rid of them. So big up to you, big up to your colleague there. You know.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm really proud of this, and I know he is too, because what we're trying to do here is just observe what is going on up and down our country and just bring snippets of video footage of real Britain. And, you know, in this case, the Transport for London had spent 6 months trying and failing to move these very, very unpleasant vagrants on. They were pretty aggressive vagrants. We saw them throwing stones at people and threatening. And
why don't we have a look at? Well, let's have a quick look at it. Remind ourselves. Let's have a look at what Isabel's mysterious colleague filmed.
I'm not doing anything. I do what? I'm not. Hey, move. Hey. Hey, help me! Help me!
So that's why we're being quite evasive about your colleague, because obviously he does this dangerous work and we're not going to identify him. But so there he was, those Paddington squatters suddenly, by the way, you know, they break into our country illegally and that's the way they treat us. That's how they respond to this nation's hospitality. They attack us with stones. Anyway, they've been cleared out now. And going back to your footage of the pro-Palestine demonstrators, alarm and distress, that lot. What did you notice? What was absent? Who were conspicuous?
I'll tell you who was absent. Lots of police officers.
No coppers. Now,
where might they have been? Well, you know, somewhere else in central London where there was another pointless protest going on.
This is in Dover over the weekend. Now, remember Isabel's footage there of the pro-Palestine alarm and distress, that lot. That woman, what an idiot.
Yeah.
Obviously her lawyers have if you say they're causing you alarm and distress, then you'll have a very good case for a legal sort of lawsuit. Yeah, right. Alarm and distress. Anyway, no coppers there. Here are some people protesting against boats, calling for the boats to stop the boats down in Dover over the weekend. See if you can spot the difference between the number of coppers in your video and the number of coppers in this video. There it goes. Here we go. Stop the boats. There we go. That's a load of motorbikes, isn't it? Right. More motorbike there. There we go. The coppers all over the place. This is in Dover at the weekend. Look how many coppers are there. Whereas up in London over the weekend, no coppers policing pro-Palestine demonstrations. This is typical, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty heavy police presence. I'm glad to say, unless I've missed something, that was a peaceful protest. And, you know, I have warned that people are going to go to Dover and start protesting. I hadn't heard that there was any such concrete plan, but I felt that that's what people are going to start to do, because they just want to do something. You know, people feel very disempowered to stop this flow of unknown young men coming across the channel into the UK, which we then have to pay for. I think this stuff's going to escalate. I don't want to see trouble. I really don't, because that's not in anyone's interest. But unless this government gets a grip of the illegal crossings, then I think we'll see more protests like that. And I hope people are peaceful about it, but I understand their anger.
Yeah, and by the way, in terms of the Dover demonstration that we're just looking at, I mean, I approve of that police presence. That's proper policing. You have a group of people, a gathering of hundreds of people. The police should keep a close eye. So that's good. Where were they when our alarm and distress friends were marching through central London? That's the point. There's a two-tier aspect to this. But as you say, Isabel, people are reaching a breaking point. You know, they want something to be done. And Keir Starmer better watch his step. Because I like you, I don't want to see trouble, but you can see it brewing here. You can see it brewing. And this two-tier approach is not going to help. Listen, we better go to break now. We're going to talk about the BBC after the break. Another astonishing feat of gaslighting, staring the public in the face and saying, we do not have a toxic culture at the BBC. Really? That's news to the rest of us. We'll talk about that after these messages. Stay where you are.
We made a lot of progress with the last Trump administration in getting the trade deal. Sadly, that was interrupted by COVID and the fallout from that. So that didn't happen. And Biden was against a trade deal with anybody, basically. So we couldn't make any headway. Now Trump's back in play. He has this great affinity with the UK. He has obviously lots of investments in the UK, so it's a much greater likelihood. So we welcome that. Obviously, there's lots of detail behind that. We've got to make sure that the UK industry, our farmers, our food producers are on a fair and level playing field.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Isabel, let's conclude this excellent 60 minutes with a chat about the state broadcast of the BBC. Incredibly, on the day that it is revealed that one of its Middle East reporters posted on Facebook that, and I quote, "We shall burn you," that's the Jews, "as Hitler did. But this time we won't have a single one of you left." That's a BBC reporter in the Middle East, a freelance who's been on the Beeb more than a dozen times, I do believe. So as it is revealed that that's the kind of person they're employing to conduct their incredibly impartial coverage of the Middle Eastern dispute, the Middle Eastern conflict, the BBC marks its own homework yet again, and after spending a fortune of licence fee payers' money on a management consultant's review, it concludes that the BBC does not have a toxic culture but must do better. I mean, come on. Like, maybe you could not be so blatantly anti-Semitic. Perhaps you could admit that the legally prescribed terrorist organisation Hamas is actually a terrorist organisation. Maybe you could stop being so absurdly left-wing in your clearly biased reporting, BBC. How about also not employing as your prestigious chief news anchor a sordid little paedophile? And when you're finally forced to concede that Hugh Edwards, this child sex pervert, is perhaps not quite ideal for this key role, maybe don't pay him £200,000 more of his £440,000 salary. Then we've got Greg Wallace. We've got what's going on at the bullying row at Strictly Come Dancing, and so on and so forth. The scandals that consume this organisation day in, day out are frankly a disgrace, and yet they stare us in the face today and say we haven't got a toxic culture, but we could do better when it comes to handling wrongdoing presenters or wrongdoing members of staff. I mean, who are they kidding?
You know, I'm so fed up of these BBC stories, aren't you? I'm so fed up. You know, every few months there's some other BBC scandal. You remember, I'm not sure whether you mentioned the one with the documentary.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it's the Gaza thing, yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, you know, what it's like to be a child in Gaza by the son of a Hamas operative or some such.
Yeah.
You know, I'm laughing here, but it's so incredibly depressing, isn't it? Because we are all basically forced to pay the damn license. I mean, I had a reminder note about paying the license in a property which has never had a TV and never will. And it was unbelievably aggressive. You know, it was kind of like, we are going to come and remove all your possessions unless you pay your license for a TV I don't have. The place was unoccupied. You know, it was menacing. It really was. And I just think the time has come where the whole thing needs to be totally restructured, and it has to compete with the rest of the commercial stations on a level playing field. I'd get rid of the license fee now, and I wouldn't have said that 10 years ago, but it is so institutionally left-wing, and the worst of it is it doesn't even realise it's like that, because there are so many of them in there that it's just normal for them.
Yeah, it's a biased organisation. Its reporting has become a national issue, to be honest with you. It's just ridiculous. What was it that a barristers organisation monitored the reporting of Gaza on the BBC and found something like 154 examples of blatant anti-Semitic lies, broadcast by the British Broadcasting Corporation, over a period of months, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And yet they mark their own homework, which they shouldn't be allowed to do, and they turn round to us. Again, you talked about gaslighting earlier in the show. This is gaslighting licence fee payers. Oh, we don't have a problem. We don't have a toxic culture. I mean, as I say, tell that to Hugh Edwards, tell that to Greg Wallace, tell that to the guys at Strictly, tell that to the documentary department that put on that ridiculous documentary starring the son of a Hamas minister, which they didn't deign to mention to us, and so on and so forth. This state broadcaster of ours has got a massive toxic culture problem and is epically self-deluding itself here.
Yeah, and it's such a pity, isn't it? Because it is a huge global brand. And, we have to hope that perhaps in terms of its global reputation, it's less damaged than it feels to us in the UK. But that brand, it could be worth so much. And there's bits of the BBC that we can almost all agree on are amazing. The old David Attenborough stuff, he's obviously producing less of it now, but that kind of stuff is what people willingly pay the license fee for. But when it comes to news, the BBC just can't keep up with the modern news cycle. They're usually way behind other websites, other news organizations like our own in reporting the big stuff that's happening. And so what's the point of them unless they carry a certain credibility, a certain absolute, doubtlessness about them being correct? Then I don't see how they can really justify their existence. And unfortunately, they're so biased that that's been eroded.
And can I suggest that the BBC sues Hugh Edwards because that they erroneously kept on paying him after he was charged with paedophile offences, child sex offences. You might say, well, until he's found guilty, we will continue to pay him. You might make that decision. It would have been better, I would have thought, to hold back his money. But he got 200 grand of his £440,000 a year salary after he was charged with child sex offences. 200,000. The BBC afterwards said, "Oh, Hugh, sorry, can we have that money back, please?" And funnily enough, he has declined to return the £200,000 that they paid him. Well, why don't they sue him? Why don't they sue him and say, you broke your contract by bringing this organisation into disrepute and therefore we are suing you for your money back? Why don't they do it? Why don't they, for once, why doesn't that guy Tim Davie, the Director General, just for once show some backbone?
Well, that'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? It would send out a real message, and it would send out a message that the corporation values every pound of taxpayers' money that it gets. And whilst £200,000 is allowed to sit in the pockets of a paedophile that they employed, then that is not the message that's going out. The message that's going out is, oh, well, it's only 200 grand, it's not worth the fight. I think it is worth the fight. It's worth the fight on a point of principle. They should demand the money back, not ask, demand the money back, and say, if you don't pay it, we're going to go have a really, really public fight about this.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what they should do. That's what they must do, but that's what they won't do. Because in the end, the reason they didn't go after him, the reason they sort of carried on paying, because they thought, oh, this is just tabloids, this is red top nonsense. Poor old Hugh, he's getting a hard time. Yeah, well, next time, maybe you pay attention when the Sun breaks a big story like that. Isabel, fantastic. Thank you so much for a brilliant hour. Isabel Oakeshott there, Talk's international editor. When we come back after the 8 o'clock news, the great Sharon Davis will be joining us. And she's got a question. Why was the London Marathon allowed to break the law after the Supreme Court's biological sex ruling? That next. You better stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, in a little while, about half an hour, going to be taking your calls, 03444991000, and we are going to be covering a lot of material this next second hour. First up, of course, we're going to be talking to the great Sharon Davis. We'll get on to her in just a little while. Also, we're going to be talking about the fact that this government is employing more than 1,300 unelected Quango staff who are earning more than £100,000 a year. This after they said that they would burn the Quangos. There'd be the bonfire of the Quangos. Well, it turns out that 350 of these Quango bosses are earning more than the Prime Minister. So what happened to the bonfire? Couldn't they light it or something? And finally, we'll go back to the migrant crisis and find out why more than 1,000 asylum seekers have been waiting in this country for more than 10 years after applying for asylum. So 1,096 asylum seekers have been here for more than 10 years. What's that about? I mean, it's because they're allowed to constantly appeal. So we should do something about that. Wouldn't you have thought? 0344 499 1000. Now, let's go straight over now because there are a number of issues we need to talk with her about with her to Olympic legend, the great Sharon Davis. Welcome, Sharon.
Good evening, Kev. How was your holiday?
Oh, it was lovely. I was sort of down your way. I was just past Plymouth on Whitsand Bay. Do you know that? Really nice.
Yeah, I do. I miss the sea so much.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was lovely. The sun shone. I got sunburnt. How about that? Meanwhile, back in London, London Marathon yesterday, I saw you quoted and I thought, my God, what's going on? I mean, why were they allowed to essentially break the law? They allowed trans women, and can we drop that phrase anymore? I'm not using trans women.
Trans-identifying men.
Well,
okay, that's what they are. Trans-identifying males. You know, they're males or transsexuals. You know, which is the old-fashioned term, which is exactly what they are, really, to be honest with you, because they've not changed. You know,
they're not trans
women. They've not
women.
changed their sex.
They're men.
No, they're not. I find it quite offensive that women gets used in this terminology, and I think it's deliberately used to try to conflate and confuse all the time. So I think, you know, there's a lot of people out there that go, well, are trans men women or trans women? It's like trans-identifying men or trans-identifying males and vice versa. And then we know what sex they are. So that's where I go nowadays.
Right, trans-identifying males. OK, so why were trans-identifying males allowed to race against women? Why were, let's put it in a more confrontational way, shall we? Why were men who pretend to be women allowed to race against real women? Because their times, trans women's times, were listed with real women's times. So in other words...
Yeah, and their places as well, you know, because a lot of, you know, what's very, very annoying is that the London Marathon is licensed by UK Athletics. So it's a licensed event that's attached to UK Athletics. Now, UK Athletics have protected the women's category for years now. So, you know, they were breaking the rules not only because of the Supreme Court ruling 10 days ago, but also because of the fact they run it under a license of UK Athletics. And they've been told, they were told that, you know, the ruling was a clarification of the rule. The rule hasn't changed. The Supreme Court haven't added anything, taken anything away. They've just clarified it. So what's been happening for the last 10 years is that women's rights have been eroded against the law. And I've been telling these sporting bodies, and I know that Sex Matters have, I know that For Women Scotland have, you know, we've been constantly telling all of these organisations that they're being misrepresenting the law for a very long time. And that was deliberately done by Stonewall, who went out of their way to misrepresent the law. And they did not want to know that they were, you know, doing that. And for the first 5 years, we couldn't even debate. We couldn't even present the facts. And you know what it was like in the old days of Twitter. You know, if we even absolutely said, you know, a man was a woman or a woman was a man, we got removed, you know, so it was really difficult to even get this information out. So don't ask me why, you know, Hugh Braysher decided that he was going to carry on and do this, because I just don't really get it. The women's elite race, of course, was protected. But the thousands of women that were racing, behind that, including lots of very good club runners, were not protected. And I can't get my head around ever how you can go, these women are worthy of fair and safe sport, and these women are not worthy of it, because surely just women are worthy of it,
But this was against the law, against the new law, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely against the law. And they were told that. And then also, that it was clarified as well. So not only did the Supreme Court clarify it, the Human Rights, UK Human Rights Association did as well. So they had it double-barreled, and they still decided to do it against, all of that advice. And I just find it so disheartening. I just don't understand why there seems to be this war on women. And sport is one of the areas where it's really, you can't even contest that there's a biological difference and that it matters to the result. And so why is it that we are so less important than the feelings of a few men? I just don't get it. And what they could have done, even at the last moment, was said, okay, well, let's introduce an extra classification if you want to do that. Let's have men and let's have women and let's have mixed. And those people that don't care and want to go in the mix, they can go in the mix. Those women that want to be just, racing, competing against women, will then go in the women's category. Instead of that, they ran under the women's category with men in it. So,
I mean, this is the worry, isn't it? That people who don't like the Supreme Court's ruling, and there's a lot of people in athletics who don't like it, a lot of people in politics, a lot of people all over the country in various organisations don't like it, the NHS, for example, that they're going to continue to rail against what the Supreme Court ruled last week. They're going to do their level best to undermine it.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, the next job for women will be to do a number of court cases and a number of challenges. That's what we're going to have to do, is legal challenges to make these things actually, be held up, whether that's against Lloyds that decide to break the law by not providing women's toilets for employees, which is what they have to do, or, whether it's in sports, we have our own category, so all these different areas, we are going to have to fight for them all over again. I think once there's yet again more winning, and we've won so many different things, whether that's the nurses, or whether that's mayor, or all these different court cases, that thousands of pounds. And do you know what's frustrating is an awful lot of taxpayers' money has been used by these organisations to fight women.
Yeah.
And I don't believe the taxpayers want their money to be spent on this. And the general public is not behind the erosion of women's rights. So it's about time that people just started to listen. But, we know that doesn't happen in lots of arenas, don't we? So, it's...
So you and your fellow campaigners are going to do your best to hold everyone to account who breaks this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
yeah?
in sport, it will be a little bit like dominoes. So I think once one or two start to go, particularly things like football, because they have been particularly difficult and particularly awful, all of everybody else will fall into line. And actually, when you say that there are people that don't want it, to be honest with you, all the people that I meet in sport, actually they do, but they've been very cowardly about it. Yeah. They've basically caved to Stonewall abuse and activist threats, and they've thrown their women under the woke bus because it's the easiest option. It's not really the option that most of them actually believe in. It's just the option that was easiest.
So after the ruling then, first of all, we learned that in London, I can't quite get my head around it, that in the NHS, basically men who identify as women will be allowed to continue using female spaces. I'm not quite sure how that fits in with the ruling. So that's one organisation that's clearly going to cause a lot of problems. The NHS won't like this at all. It's built. Well,
we know what's happened as well, don't we? Because we know a lot of the DEI situations. They put themselves into positions now where they have such power. And again, I don't believe that is the consensus across the whole of the National Health Service. I speak to a lot of nurses who feel very threatened. The problem is women tend not to speak up because they feel threatened. When these men say, well, I've been in women's toilets and no one's ever complained, that's because women are petrified, that they're not going to complain when a 6'2" bloke walks in with a wig on and a pair of fishnet tights. They're just not going to. They're going to stay quiet and get out of there as quick as they possibly can. That is not, a rubber stamp that no one had a problem with it. And that's what's so ridiculous. And I think also what we really, really need to understand is that there's a reason why we have men and women's toilets, or men and women's changing rooms, and men and women's sport. And one of them is crime statistics. You know, obviously sport is my area, but again, it's not talked about. To get a gender recognition certificate, no one has to have surgery. No one has to even have hormones, right? And again, the general public on the whole don't realise that. And I think if you look at sexual abuse and people that are in prison, there's 4% of women that are in prison for sexual abuse and sexual assault. I think it's something like 18% for men. Kev, have a guess. What are the percentages for trans-identifying men that are in prison for sexual assault?
I don't know. You tell me. Go on. I'll get it badly.
Nearly 70%.
70%? Oh.
Nearly 70%.
This is ridiculous.
So when they say that they're not a risk, it's not true.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of organisations that we fear will rail against, try to undermine the Supreme Court's ruling, I think first among them, the worry must centre on the Labour government. What did you make of these extraordinary WhatsApp messages that were revealed actually by the Mail on Sunday, which, for example, had Angela Eagle, the Dame Angela Eagle, saying, what was it? She said that we must mobilise and that we're in consultation about how to interpret the impact of the Supreme Court ruling. We must mobilise. What's she talking about? Pat McFadden, the Cabinet Office Secretary, who was interviewed on the BBC yesterday. Now, he said, well, that does mean that in Whitehall, men will be banned from women's loos, ladies' loos, but there'll be no toilet police. Let's have a quick look at Pat McFadden.
Well, we'll all have to react to the court judgment and the guidance from the EHRC that you said. But yes, that's the logical consequence of the judgment and the guidance that's come out, that people use the facilities of their biological sex. That's what the court said, and that's what the guidance has said.
So that is what the government will ban trans people from using the facilities that they want to choose?
We will react. But look, in reality, when you say ban, am I going to be standing outside toilets? I'm probably not. There isn't going to be toilet police, but that is the logical consequence of the court ruling and the EHRC guidance.
So what do you make of that, Sharon? What I make of it is that Pat McFadden's got no interest whatsoever in enforcing the Supreme Court's rulings. It's all very well to say...
At least he wasn't misrepresenting the law, which many of the MPs have been doing, particularly from the Green Party.
Couldn't bring himself to say that men are banned from ladies' loos.
Yeah.
Couldn't bring himself to say it, could he?
Yeah, I mean, they're all dancing around it, aren't they? You know, I mean, unfortunately, what we have been finding, and particularly that WhatsApp group that you talked about, those are MPs in particular that are very, very strong TQ in apostrophes, strong kind of supporters. I think, again, it's back to that middle territory where I think Labour in particular do understand that they would have a massive problem if they rallied against this, because again, this is not what the general public want, you know, and they can't keep not listening to what people want. And I think people, you know, women and men, you know, just decent men that want to protect their daughters, their wives, their sisters, their mums, you know, they're also beginning to get very cross as well. So I don't think that it is just a woman's situation. I think that it's across the whole of society now. Dads in particular, I hear it from a lot of dads, you know, in football, whose daughters are really distressed that they've been made to play against boys and that have been picking up injuries that have been ruining their careers, you know, particularly ruining their seasons. And, you know, the FA have been a disgrace. I mean, they've been an absolute disgrace in this area. And the ECB too.
Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, he says that trans rules to uphold the law, actually, as in the Supreme Court's ruling, will be introduced in weeks. Why weeks? Why is it going to take weeks?
I don't know. I mean, I have to say, if there's one person that I, you know, like more than
most of them, yeah. No, I'm with you. I know what you mean.
It would be Wes Streeting, who I think is trying very hard to do the right thing, and he's getting, you know, a lot of difficulties from his own party and particularly from the NHS. But I think he is trying very hard to find solutions. I'm not sure the solution of giving every trans-identifying male a private room is going to work, because could you imagine if everyone that rocks up at a hospital and goes, I now identify as a woman, please give me a private room, what that might actually mean.
Exactly.
So we have to critically think around these things, right, as to what the end result will be if we come up with these solutions. So we have to really think very hard about how we do this. I don't want to make anyone's life difficult. I've always wanted everyone to be involved in sport. My position has always been one of pro-women, not anti-anybody. I would fight for anyone's right to be able to be included in sport. My position has always been one about fairness. But I think that what everyone forgets is that women now for 10 years have been abused, and the law was not changed the other day. It was literally just clarified. So we lost our rights by stealth. Nobody, and that includes the previous Conservative government, nobody really, apart from Kemi, who tried very hard, was standing up for women's rights. They were literally just ignoring the fact we were losing more and more rights every single day.
What about in the area of education? Some teachers have said that they will not tell parents if, for example, boys pretending to be girls are allowed to share sleeping spaces with the girls on school trips.
Yeah, that's pretty outrageous, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I have to say, if I was a parent, I would be taking that person to court if I found out that was the situation, because they're not allowed to do that. I actually do have a friend, would you believe it, that has a child that is in a classroom with someone who thinks they're a cat, and they have a litter tray at the back of the classroom. And I'm like, I would be removing my child from that class, because if a teacher is prepared to go along with that, there's something wrong with them. I mean,
I think I might remove the litter tray. That's for damn sure. Unbelievable.
It's crazy, isn't it? What are you doing for that poor child? Your job is to be the adult and to actually help them to grow. I mean, to allow a child to go to school and scratch other children, because that's what's been going on, and have a litter tray at the back of the class, to me is just literally insanity. I can't quite believe that these things are happening. Every day I get told stories and I just go, no, it can't be happening.
It is all so insane, and this is basically all revolving around the question, what is a woman? And if you say, well, a woman is somebody who's born a woman, biologically, is born female and grew up as a female and is a female. Oh, well, it's not as simple as that. Actually, it is. It is.
It is really simple. I mean, they convolute. They constantly try to use people that have the old-fashioned term intersex, and actually that's DSD, so differences of sexual development. And that's very much what people who have a difference of sexual development want to be called. They don't want to be called intersex because they're not in between sexes and then they're not a gotcha. Yeah. But even all of those individuals who are absolutely, it's a tiny, minuscule 0.01% of the population, that have a condition, they are still male or female. So there's not some, huge number of hermaphrodites out there causing us all sorts of problems. Human beings are, we're one of two sexes. And that is it. And it's based around our reproduction system. And we can't change that. We can't change our DNA. We cannot change our chromosomes, no matter what we do, no matter how many body parts we take off or how many hormones we take. And if you are a trans-identifying male who's taking hormones, the moment you're not being given those hormones anymore, your body will take back over again. It will revert, because testosterone is a much stronger hormone than estrogen is.
Exactly. Now, we're going to go to break now, Sharon. And when we come back, let's talk about J.K. Rowling having a bit of a row with Boy George. Boy George interpreting J.K. Rowling's campaigning for women's rights as she must hate men, and she just hates men. As J.K. has pointed out, I'm actually married to one. But anyway, we'll discuss that when we come back after this break.
We made a lot of progress with the last Trump administration and getting the trade deal. Sadly, that was interrupted by COVID and the fallout from that. So that didn't happen. And Biden was against a trade deal with anybody, basically. So we couldn't make any headway. Now Trump's back in play. He has this great affinity with the UK. He has obviously lots of investments in the UK, so it's a much greater likelihood. So we welcome that. Obviously, there's lots of detail behind that. We've got to make sure that the UK industry, our farmers, our food producers are on a fair and level playing field.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Sharon Davis, Olympic legend, women's rights campaigner, of course. By the way, Sharon, before we get on to Boy George and J.K. Rowling, I was just discussing with my producer your extraordinary story about the kid is it your kids' class?
Yes. Well, no, it was a friend's. It was a friend's.
A friend
who came to me, because I get all these stories. Obviously, people are ringing me up and speaking to me all the time, stopping me in supermarkets and goodness knows what. I mean, I had a lovely lady stop me the other day in Lidl, and she came up to me, she had tears in her eyes, and she said, I just want to say thank you. And obviously, I said, well, for what you're doing? And she said, I was a care worker. And I'm not going to say exactly where, but it's not very far away from where I live. And she said, I was a care worker, and they brought a trans-identifying male in and the older ladies didn't want to obviously have intimate care by this person. And I had a problem with it, and I told them, and they sacked her. And she'd been a care worker all her life, and she was just, and I said, well, now why don't you, make a claim against them? And she just said, look, I'm old and I'm retired and I'm tired, and I have a heart condition. I'm just not going to do it. But I just needed to say thank you. And off we went into Lidl and did our shopping. And there's so many stories like that,
Sure. Well, our question, though, to you about your friend's kid and the litter tray. Does the kid who identifies as a cat, does he or she use the litter tray?
I don't know. I didn't actually ask. I just know there was a litter tray in the back of the room, and that child had been done for scratching. And so other children were having to put up with being scratched in the class because this little girl identified as being a cat.
Unbelievable. Well, let's move on to J.K. Rowling, one of your fellow heroes, heroines, should say, I guess, in the campaign that was so triumphant last week with the Supreme Court's ruling. Boy George says that J.K. Rowling, because she continues with this campaign, must hate men. As I said in my monologue at the beginning of the show, well, at least she doesn't chain them to radiators and hit them with a blunt instrument like you did, George. But you must get this as well. Doesn't that annoy you that Boy George's interpretation of J.K. Rowling's heartfelt campaign that you've been such a part of as well, to get women's rights, biological sex ruling, he interprets this as she must hate men?
Isn't the irony of all of that recognising then that trans-identifying men, trans women, are men? I mean, that is literally what he's saying. That is the irony of the situation. And you were spot on. This is a man in 2009 that served 15 months for false imprisonment and assaulting a male escort. And also a man who spent most of his life with more makeup on than I've ever done in my life. And no one ever had a problem with it, did they? So there's so much there's irony amongst that. It's just ridiculous. JK's been very happily married for a long time. She absolutely doesn't hate men at all. She's just a women's rights campaigner, and we talk a lot about toilets, but actually the serious side of it is it's right crisis centres, it's hospitals, like you said, it's working rights, it's all the things that women have fought for decades to get put into law, and now what's also really very important because of that Supreme Court ruling or clarification was that our laws that were put into the Sex Discrimination Act of 1975 now really stand, whereas we were beginning to feel that was just literally wiped out, that meant nothing anymore.
Exactly. Now, Boy George says, stop this nonsense. If you don't agree with J.K. Rowling, you hate women. She hates men. This is where the truth lies. She cannot differentiate between a trans woman and a biological male, which is weird with her imagination. That is just arrant claptrap, isn't it? Absolute rubbish.
Yeah, and you know also what's also rather striking is in the early days he was pro fair sport. So I know that I retweeted a couple of his tweets, like, 8 years ago, when actually he was saying that women's sport should be fair. So he's kind of changed because it's not the clever, woke, interesting thing to do. And unfortunately, that's a lot of what this problem is. It's become a bit of a fashionable thing to do, to jump on this bandwagon of pretending that biological sex doesn't actually exist.
Exactly right. Well, JK went on to hit back to George and say, I'm married to a man, George. I do not hate men. I simply live in reality where men, however they identify, commit 98% of sexual assaults and 88% of victims are female. Trans-identified men are no less likely than other kinds of men to pose a risk to women or girls, as you were saying earlier, Sharon.
Yeah, and actually, as I explained, they're a bigger risk. Percentage-wise, the number of men that are in prison, is about 19% for men for sexual assault, and the number of men percentage-wise that are in prison who are trans-identifying is way up there in the high 60s, nearly 70%. So I mean, it's that's like nearly 3 times as much, right? That's 3 times as dangerous. So that's why we are genuinely scared by being in a confined space with these people. And then think about children. I mean, I have a real problem because UK Active gave advice to all the leisure centres and swimming pools and private clubs like David Lloyd's, and Virgin Active, to say that anyone should be able to identify into any changing that they feel most comfortable in. So literally you have people that would be rocking up that day going, right, today I identify as a woman, and going into a changing room and changing next to young girls. I've got a granddaughter, it's 5. I would not let it happen. I mean, I just would not. I would have smoke coming out my ears, So,
absolutely. Yeah.
But a lot of people wouldn't be necessarily quite so brave, and they just carry on.
And so are you saying, Sharon, then that, obviously these are going to be difficult months, probably years ahead, as we've discussed. More and more, or many organisations are going to rail against this. This. We've already seen evidence of it that we've been discussing in the past half an hour. Are you saying that you and your companions in your campaign are going to be very vigilant about this? You're going to launch as much...
I don't think we have much of a choice, Kevin. I think that's the only way we can go now. The law is very much on our side, so therefore we have to actually call them out. And I will definitely be doing it in sport.
So if people break the law after last week's Supreme Court ruling on biological sex, you and your fellow women's rights campaigners will sue. You will launch legal action.
Absolutely.
As much as possible.
If you think about the 4 women Scotland, which was the wonderful ladies from Scotland who brought the court case, to the Supreme Court, they had to raise about 400,000. So although JK gave them 70 grand, there was £400,000. That's £330,000 that had to be raised from women that were just putting their hands in their pockets and giving 10 quid. I gave 50 quid. I know loads of women that gave money. That money's all going to be returned to them, right? Because they get costs. So we are going to have that money available to us, and I'm thinking very strongly about setting up a foundation which will be strongly around sport, so that people can donate to that, and we can just take them on, and we can turn around and go, no, we're going to protect them one sport at a time. But we saw Poole go this week. Poole have had to give in and protect their female athletes. How crazy was it that 2 weeks ago in the women's final of Ultimate Pool,
two men
in the final, and they won more prize money between them than the 14 women behind them. Right?
That's
and
ridiculous.
£48,000 has gone to men in women's pool in the last couple of years. I mean, it's just disgraceful. And in America, $1.6 million has gone to men in women's cycling. So, it's just disgraceful, especially when we get such a small slice of the cake, Kev. I mean, that's the thing which is really, really rubbing salt in the wounds. Women get about 4 or 5% of the sponsorship dollar across the world. In the world of sport, we represent half of the world, and we get 4 or 5% of the money. And we were told for the last 10 years we weren't even entitled to that.
It's not fair, and we've got to redress the balance. Can I just ask you, as we come towards the end of this great conversation, Sharon, Kemi Badenoch has announced that perhaps trans people should use disabled toilets. What do you make of that?
I just think we need to have discussions about third spaces. You know, I'm not anti any of that. I want to try solutions that work for everybody. All I can tell you is when swimming, World Aquatics created a third category, which was a trans inclusion category, not a single athlete turned up.
Really?
Not one. And this was in Berlin a couple of years ago at a World Cup. And so I can tell you for a fact that those trans-identifying males, because it was males, right? Because the women carried on competing in the women's category and nobody had a problem with it, providing they weren't taking testosterone. Those males didn't want to actually just be included. They wanted to win women's prizes because they had an advantage. So I think we might have the same problem with the toilet scenario. You know, creating neutral spaces isn't what they want. They want to come into our spaces.
So what you're saying, though, to reiterate, is you're going to pursue this aggressively to make sure the law is upheld in all areas.
Yeah, I think we have to. I mean, you know, I've got a daughter that did sport and I've now got a granddaughter, and I just think we have to make sure that they've got that opportunity. You know, it's one of the most heartbreaking things that I've heard over the whole 10 years of fighting for this, since 2015 when the IOC changed the rules, without any consultation to female elite athletes whatsoever, was this lady who actually spoke to me about her daughter. And the primary school had decided to do just non-gender racing all day long, because that way there wasn't any confusion and no one's feelings was going to get hurt. So they just had mixed races all day, and not one little girl had won a competition that day. Not one single race was won by a little girl on their primary school sports day. What message are we giving little girls, you know?
I mean, that is the point, isn't it, Sharon? That if you and your fellow campaigners don't aggressively try to enforce the law, if you like, with legal action, then the ruling by the Supreme Court is basically meaningless. If you let everybody just ignore it, if you let organisations, if you let the London Marathon just break the law, then the ruling will be undermined to a catastrophic extent. So you guys are going to try and make sure that this law is now enforced.
Absolutely, for all levels, you know, not just for elite, but for all levels. There's been so many sports that have copped out and just gone, right, we'll look after the elite and the rest of you we're not going to look after. And that's 99%, because the elite is only a very small number of people. But then you've got to get to being elite, haven't you? You know, you've got to sort of go up through the ranks. And if it's ruining the pathways, how do we get elite? And things like the ECB were allowing fully grown men to bowl balls at 13-year-old girls. You know, and we were there, we saw broken arms, you know, and all sorts of different injuries. So yes, we will be fighting it without a shadow of a doubt. We will be fighting it. But also, I would very much like to try and go, how can we include everybody? Yeah. How can we make sure that everybody has an opportunity to do sport? I don't want anyone excluded from sport, because it's really important that we do physical activity and that, you know, that everyone is involved. All I've ever wanted is it just to be fair.
Yeah, let's make sure that it's fair. That is the point. Sharon, it is always a privilege and a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. That was Olympic legend, women's rights campaigner Sharon Davis. Let me know what you think about what she was saying. 0344 499 1000. When we come back after this break, we're going to talk about quangos and the amount of money the government is spending paying people who work on these non-government organisations that you and I pay for. It's quite extraordinary, so stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about Quangos. That stands for Quasi-Autonomous Non-Government Organisations. Basically, they've always really existed. Tony Blair sent the whole syndrome into overdrive. Basically, the more of these organisations, these bodies, these panels, these committees you have of unelected individuals, the more the government controls in an undemocratic kind of a way. Now, every government, when they come in, always say, we're going to have a bonfire of the Quangos. There are too many Quangos. This government has been no exception. They said they were going to dramatically reduce the number of Quangos in operation in this country. Well, it turns out that they haven't exactly been going hell for leather on that. And basically, there are hundreds and hundreds of people working on this increasing number of Quangos who are earning a fortune, and we're paying for this fortune. So you've got more than 1,300 unelected Quango staff on salaries and benefits of more than £100,000 a year, and also 350 buses of these semi-political organisations are on more than £172,153 a year, and that's the Prime Minister's salary. So 350 Quango bosses are earning more than the Prime Minister. So what is that all about? Let's talk to, from the Taxpayers Alliance, William Yarwood. Hi, William.
Good evening, Kev. Thanks for having me on the show.
Always a pleasure. What is going on here? I mean, Starmer, this Labour government promised us the bonfire of the Quangos. In fairness, every government always promises us a similar bonfire, but the number of Quangos just seems to go up and up and up. But these numbers and the salaries being paid are a source of some alarm, aren't they? 1,300 Quango staff on more than 100 grand a year, 350 on more than £172,153 a year, which is the Prime Minister's salary. This is out of control, isn't it?
Yeah, it's completely out of control. I mean, I think the most stark statistic there is the 350 earning more than the Prime Minister, because it really brings into question who is actually governing Britain at the moment. This paper, Quango Rich List, is part of our broader campaign, Britain's Quangos Uncovered, where we at the Taxpayers Alliance are going to sort of take the veil off, if you will, of the backroom bosses, the Quangocrats and so on and so forth, and show to the British public actually who's governing Britain, what they're doing and how much they're costing. And this is one of the first papers we've done in this series. But yeah, these figures are insanely alarming. I mean, if I can just pick out one or two for clarity, if you will, the CEO of HS2 Limited, that fantastic transport scheme which is totally built and on time and under budget, their CEO Mark Thurston took home a salary of £618,000 in 2023-24. When people talk about, Quangocrats and civil servants and so on and so forth, and the need to pay them more in order to attract talent, my question is, why on earth are Quangocrats such as Mark Thurston earning this level of money when clearly there's no talent there at all?
Mark Thurston is in charge of what Quango?
He's in charge of HS2 Limited.
HS2 Limited, right. Of course he gets a fortune, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Well, quite. What a mess.
Yeah, it's a complete mess. And what's worse, Kev, is that about 94 Quangos actually didn't provide us any accounts. So the figure could actually be a lot larger than the one me and you were talking about this evening. It's
an absolute disgrace. It really is. Still with government waste and the money they spend on our account that they shouldn't. Let's talk about this Northern Irish rap trio called Kneecap. Now, while the Tories were still in government, Kemi Badenoch, then the business secretary, took away their £14,250 grant. They were given a government funding grant to help their music and also to help them touring abroad, apparently. Kemi Badenoch took it away because she said they were anti-British because they're always calling for Tory MPs to be killed. They're big fans of Hezbollah and Hamas. They like to scream support for those terrorist organisations from the stage. Kemi Badenoch took the grant away. The band of Kneecap appealed and won their money back. Labour gave up the ghost and they've still got that money. Let's have a quick look at Quango's Kneecap in action.
Tories. The only good Tory is a dead Tory.
This is one of the members of the band saying the only good Tory is a dead Tory, kill your local Tory MP. Kemi Badenoch has now reported them to the police over this, and the police are investigating. But my question would be is how come they've got 15,000 quid's worth of taxpayers' money? This lot who talk about killing Tory MPs and also shout their effusive support for proscribed terrorist groups from the stage. They're breaking the law here on 2 counts. Why have they got our money?
Because they just gamed the system, I think, Kev. And actually, the reason Kemi had to block money going to them in the first place is because a Quango, namely UKRI, was deciding to give them arts funding in the first place. And I'm glad Kemi did block it, but the problem is this Labour government dropped the case against it, which means they walked away with about 14.2k. But it actually gets a little bit worse, Kev. Jewish Chronicle actually revealed recently that they're actually not finished talking about how much money they're going to receive from legal costs, meaning that the overall cost could actually be around £90,000 of taxpayers' cash by the end of it. So if you add the 14,000 together to the 90,000, that's possibly be walking away with over £100,000 of cash simply because the previous Conservative government, quite rightly, didn't think that this Irish nationalist violent rap group should deserve a single penny of taxpayers' cash. And quite frankly, they're disgraceful. And if this Labour government wants to show that they're serious, they need to take all the money away from them and actually prosecute them for inciting hatred and violence against democratically elected politicians.
Yeah, I mean, Kemi's point was why should a band that is so against Britain, that rails against Britain, that clearly hates Britain, why should it have £15,000 of Britain's money, British taxpayers' money? It was November 24, so just a few months back at London's Kentish Town Forum, quite near where I live, as a matter of fact, where this band appeared and they were screaming at the audience, "Up Hamas, up Hezbollah." That's against the law. That's against the law.
Yeah, it's completely against the law. But the issue is because even though Kemi did block it, it shouldn't have gone there in the first place, because actually it wasn't actually a government minister's decision to give money to that group in the first place. And that's the entire problem with our sort of broader quangocracy and broader bureaucracy and broader civil service, Kevin, because ministers and Secretary of States don't actually have the power to show and make sure money goes into the correct place or take money away from hostile actors like Kneecap, and that's the core problem.
Yeah, Kemi Badenoch said that it was good the police were looking into these allegations. She said, "Kneecap's glorification of terrorism and anti-British hatred has no place in our society. Now footage shows one of them saying the only good Tory is a dead Tory, kill your local MP. After the murder of Sir David Amess, this demands prosecution." What do you think, folks? Let me know. 0344 499 1000. William Yarwood from the Taxpayers Alliance, many thanks for your company, your excellent report there. Next up, we're going to go back to the migrant crisis and talk about these asylum seekers who've been hanging around in Britain for more than a decade, waiting for a decision on whether or not they can stay. In fact, they've had lots and lots of refusals. You can't stay. All right, I'll appeal. You can't stay. I'll appeal again. You can't stay. I'll appeal again. We're sending you home. I'll appeal again. Why do we let them keep appealing? What is the point? There's no point in refusing people if it's meaningless. OK, let them have one appeal, maybe 2 max, but no more. but they constantly appeal until they get the right decision. That's insane, isn't it? That next, stay tuned.
BBC presenter Jonathan King jailed, right? Jimmy Savile's revelations came out in 2012. That's 13 years ago.
Yeah.
That led to Operation Yewtree of Scotland Yard, where we saw, Rolf Harris being jailed, Stuart Hall from It's a Knockout being jailed. This is well over a decade ago. They launched a review at that time. Nothing happened with that review. It was kicked into the long grass once again.
Yeah.
And you sort of got the idea that they felt, oh, those were old toxic males of the 1970s.
It's all changed
no longer
now.
like that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go back to the migrant crisis. There are 1,096 asylum seekers in this country who first applied to reside here, to stay here, more than 10 years ago. 1,096 asylum seekers have been waiting for a decision for 10 years. The point is they've had decisions, they've had many decisions, but every time they get a decision that doesn't go their way, they just appeal immediately. And so they stay, and so on and so forth. So refusal to allow these people to stay just is pointless, meaningless. Let's speak to asylum seeker campaigner, a migrant crisis expert, Stephen Wolfe. Hello, Stephen.
Good evening, Kevin. How are you?
I'm all right. What about this? More than 1,000 asylum seekers, 1,096 to be precise, have waged their long legal battles for over a decade to stay in this country. Now, the ludicrous aspect of this is it's not that they're waiting for a decision. They will have had decisions. They will have had decision after decision which haven't gone their way. As soon as they're told, I'm sorry, you can't live here, they just appeal. And so they're allowed to stay until their appeal is heard. If it goes the wrong way, they appeal again. Surely, we've got to stop them being allowed to just constantly, eternally appeal. It's ridiculous.
Well, common sense, logic, and those who believe in the rule of law would believe that once an appeal has been extinguished, as this has occurred in many, many times, then these people should face the law and be deported. But of course, we've had consecutive governments that are unwilling to deal with Article 8 of the European Court of Human Rights, either by abolishing it or changing it to ensure that these appeals can no longer be consistent and continuous. They've failed to be able to deport by having proper and appropriate agreements in place with countries that we can send them back, and where those that we don't, we use our soft power and influence to be able to ensure, as Donald Trump has done, to be able to return them. It all smacks of generally weak politicians, weak civil servants, and weak individuals in policy who regard that this is just something that needs to be managed and ensure that we hide as much as we can so the public don't get incensed. Unfortunately, every day now, the public is getting incensed because more and more information is coming out through people like ourselves and other organisations that are continually doing FOIs.
Well, so we've got if you like, migrant crisis-wise, the grim prospect of lots of nice weather ahead. It's the summer.
Yeah.
Already this week is going to be very calm and clement down on the English Channel, so more and more of them are going to come across. And we now learn that Keir Starmer or his agents are scouring the country looking for landlords to rent houses to the government to put migrants, asylum seekers in. So people are now going to find, now people have already suffered the scourge, if you like, of the local hotel being taken over by migrants. Many places have accommodation centres not too far from them. And now, you know, there's a possibility they're going to be living next door to you. They're going to be living in your street. This is like an infusion, isn't it? It's like the entire country is being slowly saturated by more and more migrants, because this government, despite saying, actually, we're going to cut down on the hotels, we're going to cut back on accommodation, they're commandeering more and more hotels, more and more accommodation centres, and now they're going for private houses. Again, this is spiralling out of control.
This is truly abysmal. The company that has so far advertised to local landlords in the north of England and in the Midlands and the East Coast are targeting those landlords in the poorest areas who provide housing to the poorest people in this country. And one of those is Serco, who make a substantial amount of money. They're one of the three main providers of an agreement with the Home Office to provide hotels. And I have termed this company a leech leviathan, Kevin, because they are a shadowy corporation siphoning billions from the taxpayer to house asylum seekers while leaving local communities already struggling with housing, scarcity in a crisis. And as a consequence, it's capitalizing on government funding and paying landlords in the poorest regions. They are converting properties that should be going to hardworking individuals who are struggling enough. And what will happen is when they take these houses off the market for asylum seekers paid for by you and I, the taxpayer, those individuals no longer will be able to afford accommodation in their areas. This is truly, truly appalling, and everybody should be rightly angered by this and chasing after Serco, its employees, its shareholders, and those funds investing in this company and saying what you're doing is immoral.
Exactly right. And there have been landlords already who've turned down this money, but what essentially they're being offered is incredibly tempting, just like the hotels before them, and the hotels are still getting offered these deals as well, which is basically, look, here's millions of pounds, or this is guaranteed rent, you'll be full up for the next 5 years, here's your rent. You know, it's often hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of pounds. This is happening at hotels, it's now happening at houses. So the offer is extremely tempting for landlords, for hotel owners, etc. But it doesn't add up to good news for the local residents in local communities. And before you go, Stephen, let me ask you this. Let's talk just briefly, I haven't got long, but as this fine weather comes in, and we just know we're going to see a kind of armada of them coming across now. It won't be long before we have our first 1,000 plus day. We've already had 705 a couple of Saturdays ago. Fairly soon there'll be over 1,000 in a single day. We'll be over 10,000 so far this year, very, very quickly. A few words from you on what we must now call Twotier Keir's laughable smash the gangs strategy. I mean, he hasn't smashed a single gang, and even if he did, so what? If you don't stop migrants, there will always be people smuggling gangs. Here we have this escalating Uber crisis and a government with a strategy that is ridiculous. It's got no chance of ever succeeding, and it hasn't succeeded. They've got no gangs. It's just performative headline hunting, and under the circumstances, that's not good enough, is it?
No. I think the title should be Labour make people smugglers gangs rich and Leviathans like Serco positively rich. They are for the corporates and for the gangs, not the public.
Well, indeed. And quite where we're going to head with this now, I don't know. But Keir Starmer doesn't seem to... I think he thought he could get away, you know, with a few sound bites, a few decent headlines, because smash the gangs looks good in a headline.
It does look good.
But reality is colliding with him now, and he's in big trouble, isn't he?
We are. We've had 9,777 arrive as of today. As of yesterday. I haven't yet got today's numbers coming in. That's $500 million to the taxpayers' cost just on them in their first year. It's over 75 million profit for the people smugglers. It's going to be huge for companies like Serco and many others who are investing in this. This is an immigration industry that Labour and Keir Starmer are failing to deal with, and in fact their policies are actively encouraging those people.
Totally right. We should have deterrents, and we've only got enticements. Absolutely absurd, but great to talk to you as always, Stephen. Thank you very much. That's Director Stephen Wolfe, the Director for the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity there. When we come back, Kimmy, what am I talking about? Kinsey Schofield on the Royals. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We will get to your phone calls in about 20-25 minutes. 03444991000. The migrant crisis, we need to talk about it. Now, Keir Starmer's agents out there scouring the country looking for houses to rent out to migrants. Right next to you, maybe. Maybe it would be your new next-door neighbours. How do you fancy that? 03444991000. Also tonight, let's talk about the pro-Palestine protesters who demonstrate for the sheer fun of it. How about those people that were arrested on Tower Bridge? Why not sort of like, you know, put them in the court, find them guilty, and then put them in jail for 5 years. That might dissuade some of these people from these ridiculous demonstrations, don't you think? And do you accept that the BBC is not a toxic organisation? It doesn't have a toxic culture? Hugh Edwards, Greg Wallace, Strictly Come Dancing, Russell Brand, the Gaza documentary that starred the son of a Hamas minister, and so on and so forth. The fact that the BBC will not call Hamas terrorists, even though they are terrorists, and so on and so forth. They say they haven't got a toxic culture. Why did they pay Hugh Edwards his wages for so long? £200,000 after he was charged with child sex offences. Why did they do that? 03444991000. Also, let's talk about what Sharon Davis was talking to me about. The worry that more and more organisations may just quite try to ignore the Supreme Court ruling on biological sex. Sharon says her and her fellow campaigners will aggressively legally pursue this law, and they will sue whenever they can, particularly in the area of sport. But don't you fear, the NHS, for example, that they're still going to carry on allowing men into women's spaces, men who identify as females into real female spaces? What do you feel about this? Don't you fear that the great and the left-wing good will do their level best to undermine the Supreme Court's ruling? 03444991000. Before we get to any of that, I've missed her for a whole week. Let's welcome back the great royal commentator, our guru on the West Coast, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kins. Where you been all my life?
You could just take me on vacation with you and your wife.
Okay, next time. That's a deal. That's a deal.
I can do the laundry, okay?
Okay, you're on, 100%. Right, let's talk about Meghan. Her podcast, it's called Confessions of a Female Founder. It's plummeted out of the top 100 podcast charts and is actually losing to a podcast all about sleeping, how to get to sleep. That is, in fact, 79th in the UK charts, whereas Meghan is outside of the top 100. This podcast, Confessions of a Female Founder, is a flop, isn't it?
I know you're shocked. I know that you just picked your jaw off the floor because you've been so absolutely shocked by this news. I have you heard the last few episodes? There's your how to go to sleep. Well, study exactly right there.
Right, I've got two. What we've done is we've mashed up the excellent guided sleep meditation and sleep hypnosis. That's one podcast. That's at number 79 in the UK charts, and also Confessions of a Female Founder, which is outside of the top 100. So take a listen.
How you doing, beauty? I'm just so happy to see you, and this is going to be so much fun. Yeah, I know. And honestly, I just want the conversations to feel relaxed and easy. Yeah. And also thinking about how I am just in it right now, talking to people who've also been so in it. Yep. And have so many iterations, whether they've IPO'd or they're at the beginning of their climb, or they said, great, I'm done, and then came back. Yeah, those things happen. Those things happen. I love that. Oh, God.
Hi, and welcome to Sleep Cove, the podcast to get a great night's sleep. I started the podcast as I knew the power of hypnosis and guided meditations to relax and help people, and wanted to share this experience with all of you who struggle to sleep at night.
Well, that looks like a really good podcast to help people get to sleep, and I don't want to undermine it, but I would suggest, Kinsey, that a guaranteed way to fall into an immediate coma for many years is to listen to Confessions of a Female Founder. Who was that she was wittering on with in this latest episode?
The latest episode was with her highbrow hippie girlfriend. And Megan, keep in mind, Megan is an investor in highbrow hippie. So when she has that person on her podcast, the ultimate objective is to sell highbrow hippie products, because then the money goes back into Megan's pocket, who's an investor. But I think who we were listening to there, I thought was Whitney from Bumble. But I could have been.
No. This is the new person. Who is it? I don't really care.
They all sound the same. All of these white women.
Yeah. Hang on. Where is it? Has it got here? Does it say who it is? They've given up bothering to tell us who she's interviewing. But this is not working, is it? I mean, to be out of the top 100 all over the world in, what is it, 3 weeks? This isn't good news, is it?
Well, it gives us really the confirmation that we all felt. We all were under the impression that these participation trophies that she private jetted all over the United States of America to collect regarding archetypes was all just a PR sham. And I think that seeing how poorly this new podcast is doing is the confirmation that we needed there, that it was all just fluff, that nobody was giving her these awards based on merit. They were giving her these awards because they wanted to use her for their own PR, for their own press, to elevate themselves. And it wasn't about anything that she was accomplishing. But truly, think about the great opportunity she had with Spotify that she flushed down the toilet, that she destroyed herself. They gave her a billboard in Times Square. They pushed her, and I said it before this ever came out. I don't think she'll ever have another Joe Rogan type moment where she knocks him off the top of the charts. Yeah. I think that was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And the more she talks, I was just having this conversation about this other podcast she's appearing on with Jamie whatever from It Cosmetics this week, Megan's first ever podcast interview, which, by the way, no one cares, because every time she's on her own podcast, she's talking about herself. But Megan dropped the ball when she did Oprah Winfrey and was so bitter and angry, because that was such a huge audience that she captured. And that is how people see her today. And she's doing all of these little micro projects trying to change public perception of her. And they simply don't. It's the same with Michelle Obama's new podcast. They don't have the reach needed to properly change public perception. Megan will live to regret that Oprah Winfrey interview, because that's how people see her, angry and full of revenge.
So that is apparently KD Lee that she's talking to.
Highbrow hippie.
That she's got financial interest in that anyway. Later on, she starts sobbing about how much she loves her kids.
Wait, that's Jamie. This is on Jamie's podcast.
Who's Jamie, for God's sake? Okay,
Jamie is.
Will she stop making podcasts? Is that too much?
Yeah. So Jamie is Megan's friend, who Megan went to that summit with at the Hampton Summit. Remember the G7 or G9 summit that G9 summit Megan went to in the Hamptons last summer, and no one wanted their photographs taken with her. They were avoiding her like the plague. Reese Witherspoon was there, Gwyneth Paltrow was there, but Megan went there with this Jamie, I don't even know her name, God love her. Jamie is an entrepreneur who has built an entire empire on the backs of women's insecurities. She has a makeup empire. Right. And these two, Megan is a guest on her podcast today, a guest on Jamie's. And she's talking all about self-love and how she's not worried about proving herself to anyone anymore. And she doesn't care about anyone's opinions of her. And she's crying about her kids while she's trying to convince us for the 9,000th time in the last 2 months that she's living her best life, the happiest she's ever been with her loose fruit spread. And Jamie, her entire audience again, she made her money on women's insecurities through this makeup line. So it's like I don't take any of these women seriously. They're not credible. Why do they think that they can teach us anything?
I'll tell you one thing. You know, I have no doubt that, I know for a fact that my mother loved me dearly. God rest her soul. I'll guarantee you this, she never told anyone that. She never went round and said, you know, I don't half love my kids a lot. I really love my kids a hell of a lot. I love my kids so much, and then start to bawl. So Meghan has this need, this weird need to say how much she loves her children. So she's telling this person, this woman, Sammy, what I do is I send my kids emails, and when they're 16 or 18, they can have a look at those emails that I sent them when they were 12 or whatever, telling them how much she loves them. This strikes me that Meghan is a kind of outsider looking in on the human race, not entirely sure how you're supposed to behave, but somewhere down the line she's picked up, you've got to love your kids a lot. So she's making a big thing of it. It's just sort of odd. You know, why does she feel...
Is it odd? Or is it shameless? We don't like you. We've told you we don't like you. We told you we don't like with Meghan. We're not watching your podcast. And it's last resort. I'm going to start parading my children around. Yeah. I'm going to start posting videos of them on social media hours after campaigning in New York to keep children off of social media because of the dangers of social media. And I'm going to thrust my kids into this space involuntarily because I'm trying to make a buck and I'm trying to change public perception. I'm seen as a mean girl. And I think I said this to you privately. She's trying to come off as so soft and sweet, but we see how severe she is when she steps out of a car and bulldozes, blasts past Prince Harry to ensure that the photographers get her favorite side. Like she's so severe. There's nothing sweet about her, that she's trying to convince us through images and video of her children that she's this great person. And you know what, Kevin? I'm sick of hearing about how hot she is for Prince Harry. Not only on Drew Barrymore, but now she's talking to Jamie about how hot her husband is, how they're still in their honeymoon phase because they were in the trenches while she was a member of the British royal family. The trenches in your $7,000 coat and stilettos, get out. Yeah. But I don't want to know how much you want to go to Pound Town with Prince Harry. I want you to defend him from what Dr. Sophie Shandaka is saying. Say anything to defend your husband against all of these accusations, against misogyny. You're sitting there talking to a girl boss, against racism, against the African Park scandal. Not once does she say that she's standing behind this man and believes in everything he's doing and he's accomplishing all of these great things for the world. It's all about how she wants to get weird with him. And what's the value in that?
I don't know. Honestly, it's getting very, very strange. There's something very desperate about her. I mean, she's here, she's there, she's everywhere. You know, talking about how much she loves her kids, how much she loves her husband. I mean, why? Why bother doing that? But she's got a business to promote. And I suspect that we've just discovered the Confessions of a Female Founder it's a flop. It's a flop. Quite clearly, and we just heard some of the drivel on it, and it's just not interesting. We always knew it would fail. Now, I also suspect that, as ever, her food hawking business is not doing very well either. And I think her business may be in some trouble. Tina Brown, obviously a good friend of Harry's mother, Princess Diana, also Princess Diana's biographer, British journalist, former editor of Vanity Fair, of course, a woman of some substance, has accused Meghan Markle of being enormously shallow and claiming that the reason that she has launched so many new businesses, and she has, it's this plethora of business ventures, is because, according to Tina Brown, she's just desperate for attention. But she goes on to say her problem is she never stops making announcements and never really follows through. In other words, she never does anything properly. She just moves on to the next half project and then the next half project. As Tina Brown says, why don't you just do one thing really well and then move on and do something else? But that doesn't seem to be her way of doing things, does it?
Where's American Riviera Orchard? She promoted American Riviera Orchard for a year before she was like, surprise, Netflix has taken this over and it has a completely new name. I think that Tina Brown is spot on, that Harry and Meghan are so money hungry that they're making horrible decisions. And I'm embarrassed for them. I mean, the podcast, the TV show, what are they saying in those boardrooms as they're trying to determine what to do with season 2 now that it's already shot, having had all the negative feedback about season 1? Is there a way to fix what they've done? Is there a way, what can they do in edit, in post, that can fix what's going on? Are they going to have to, you almost get a sense in the first season that Mindy Kaling might have given an ounce of information about herself involuntarily or, off the cuff, because there's a bizarre voiceover of Meghan asking her a question that doesn't sound like it was really there. It sounds like it's something they dropped in to make it look like Meghan was trying to engage with her guest.
Very funny also. Have you noticed oh, it's so funny you say Meghan Markle. It's actually Sussex now. I'm Sussex now, got it? Well, she's dropped that one, hasn't she? Because nobody's playing the game.
Well, no. In the new interview with Jamie,
she calls herself Sussex, does she?
She said, Jamie asks her, "Are you Meghan Markle now? Are you Meghan Sussex?" So this is just a continue.
What's she say? And Sussex.
She's Sussex now, and it's interesting because she talks about how she doesn't need grandeur. She doesn't, she's not trying to impress people. Then why are you insisting on a title? Jamie introduces her as the Duchess of Sussex. They make a big thing out of the fact that they're not wearing makeup and they're in their sweats. I mean, that is a severe exercise, PR exercise.
Yeah.
Right there in itself, that she's wearing makeup and in sweats, crying about her children. It's all just it's all just a PR exercise.
Well, old Tina Brown says that it's like, she says, it's like, I'm going to do a cooking show now. I'm going to be a podcaster. Oh, hello. I've got a new beauty line, and so on and so forth. As Tina goes on to say, she's weirdly panic-stricken in her business model. And also...
Can I make a prediction as to why I think that is?
Yeah. Go on.
I want to be careful in the way I say this, but I think they fear Prince William. And I think they fear what Prince William will do once he's king. So they have to milk it while they can. They have to milk these titles and every ounce of it while they can. That's why I get this sense of desperation, this sense of anxiousness, because they know that once Prince William is king, all bets are off. And he's not going to let them ride this anymore.
Also, I don't think her businesses are working. I don't think As Ever is working. We've just talked about the podcast. That isn't working. So this may be the source of the panic. But as Tina goes on to say, who announces a new lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard, and then hounds celebrity friends to talk up her strawberry jam on social media without even doing due diligence on the availability of the trademark? It's true, isn't it? I mean, she doesn't research, she doesn't do things properly. That's why Tina Brown is saying that she's enormously shallow in her business pursuits, in her pursuit of business. She doesn't do things properly. She's a flippity-gibbet. She doesn't concentrate on one thing, announces more and more and more, and it's just not working.
I mean, I think that that's pretty obvious. Tina Brown has been one of Meghan Markle's biggest critics, and it's got to cut Meghan deeply, considering the fact that Tina has so much clout. She was not only somebody that engaged with Princess Diana, spent private time with her, and the editor of Vanity Fair, but she's the creator of the Daily Beast, which is, you know, I love the Daily Beast. I read the Daily Beast religiously. So she has a lot of credibility, and she has from the get-go talked about just why Meghan doesn't fit the mold, why she wasn't going to work within the British royal family. And it's because of Meghan's inability to, it's the due diligence that we just spoke about, but it's because Meghan didn't want to. She always had an ulterior motive, and that was to monetize her newfound success, thanks to the man that she married.
Yeah, but is it success? Netflix apparently are privately conceding that With Love Meghan, her lifestyle series, has not been a runaway success. That is the quote. So that is doing averagely at best. As we've just said, the podcast is a disaster. As ever, I see no evidence of any success there either.
Wait, but did you see the numbers for With Love Meghan? They brought in barely a quarter of the viewers that watched. Yeah, they brought in barely a quarter of the viewers that Harry and Meghan's. So at the end, like today, With Love Meghan brought in barely a quarter of the viewers that watched the docuseries by Harry and Meghan. I would say that is not a commercial success. If we are saying that Harry and Meghan was a commercial success, and today she's brought in less than a quarter of that.
Exactly. 526,000 households in 5 days around the world, which is nothing spectacular, as you say. Harry and Meghan got more than 2 million in the same time frame. So I'd say there's trouble there. But what Tina Brown goes on to say is that the problem with Meghan is she's unadvisable. And that is that she won't take advice. And she says that's a big problem, hence the trouble with her various businesses. And the other problem with that is that the only person who Harry takes advice from is his wife. He's unadvisable except by Meghan. So as a couple, I don't think they're going forward all guns blazing at the moment. What's going on with him, for God's sake?
Well, he was just at the Aviation Awards with John Travolta again, where I will give him credit. He was there to honor firefighters, so I appreciate that.
No problem there, absolutely.
But then it reminds us of why the heck he was ever given a Living Legends of Aviation Award in the first place. I loved it last year when he took a picture with the other fake royal. Accidentally. He didn't realize
that's right. The guy was genuine fake. Yeah.
Yeah. So Harry's laying low, but I did have a conversation with our mutual friend Tom Quinn, who told me that Harry has reached out to some charities in the United States that have opted not to work with him, that they did not see the value in working with him because he's no longer committed to the British royal family. And it just gives credibility to Dr. Sophie Shandaka's version of the incident at Senabale, where she said, you've become toxic. You're no longer helpful to the brand. You're actually the problem here.
And so he's looking around to do more charity work, but it's not working out. So basically, he's got quite an empty life at the moment.
Well, that's what Tom Quinn's told me, and he told me some of his sources, and I'm confident. I'm confident in them, people that hang around Harry and Meghan, and they do say that Harry feels a little lost. But, you know, Tina Brown has mentioned the idea of royalty versus celebrity. Harry and Meghan now sinking truly into the celebrity category, you know, that decline in relevance. And she said, Harry and Meghan talk about doing good, but what good are they doing? The good you do as a royal is so much more potent. I love that she uses the word potent. She talks about how when Diana shook the hands of the AIDS patients without gloves, royals were wearing gloves. How much more potent that was that we saw a princess do that. Had it been a simple celebrity, it would have had far less meaning. So I do think that Harry and Meghan are struggling because they are sinking into and like Ben Affleck was saying, everybody's a celebrity today. There's nothing really special about a celebrity when you look over at Stagecoach and you don't recognize the line of influencers standing between Kylie Jenner and Timothée Chalamet. You know, what's so special about being a celebrity? Royalty trumps all, and they threw that away.
Indeed. Final word, talking about throwing royalty away. Prince Andrew turned up with the family, with the royal family, for Easter church service. And a lot of people are quite annoyed about this. And the papers today, The Sun, for example, all over the front pages, forget it, Andy. You are not getting back into frontline royal life. And they're pointing out that the sad death of Virginia Giuffre, who, of course, received £12 million from Prince Andrew after accusing him of sexually assaulting her when she was a minor, I do believe, around on possibly 3 continents. Obviously, Prince Andrew's always very much denied those allegations and has never admitted any of them, but did pay her many millions of dollars to not go to court. Anyway, as you see there on the front page of The Sun today, no way back, Andy, that in fact her sad death by suicide down there in Australia has made him even more of a royal outcast, a royal pariah than he was before. So I don't think the people of Britain want to see him at family church services again. The royal family, I think, are trying to sneak him back in a little bit. We don't want to see that guy again. So the royals need to get it right about Andy. The Sun's got it right there. The royal family, I think, slipped up last week.
I am never going to criticize a man that needs to have his butt in church for having his butt in church. I think Prince Andrew should probably spend more time in church. Where I talked to Dickie Arbiter about this, who's the former press secretary to Queen Elizabeth, and he said where Prince Andrew went wrong was the attitude. You know, he had his puffed out chest and was walking a little too close to the royal family. He needs to stay behind. He needs to,
Exactly right, Kinsey. What they need to do is tell him not to come. We don't want to see those pictures anymore. They don't quite get it. We don't want to see that guy anymore. That's it. And the Virginia Giuffre tragedy makes his position all the more painfully obvious that he must stay in the wings. We don't want to see him anymore. But we want to see much more of you, Kinsey. I'll be talking to you tomorrow for your excellent podcast. Recollections may vary, but for the time being, thank you very much for an excellent half an hour. The brilliant Kinsey Schofield there. Let's go straight to break. When we come back, your calls, your WhatsApp voice notes and your messages. So stick around.
our outcomes on this speak for themselves. This is not you and I, Mike, or our listeners being party political. Just look at the outcomes relative to other developed countries, and our cancer outcomes, I'm afraid, are not good at all. And a lot of that is down to delays in diagnosis, and we're still experiencing a hangover from the total
Graph, maybe.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Going to take your calls now, and I don't know if we've got any WhatsApp voice notes, but if we have, we will play them. I'll read a couple of messages out first. This is from Susan, very straightforward, brief message. Kev, no legal aid for non-UK nationals. I mean, it is a bit of a weird thing, isn't it, that these people turn up, they come across the channel illegally, they dock here illegally, and the first thing we do, apart from giving them 45 quid a week, free hotels, 4-star, free food, free doctors, free dentists, we give them free lawyers to fight their legal case to stay in this country. So why don't we just stop giving them those lawyers? Stop giving them legal aid. These people arrive like criminals. They've got no documents. They came across in an illegal vessel, and we give them lawyers. We pay for their lawyers to fight us so they can stay in this country. A little bit mad. 0344 499 1000. Michael from Islington says, Kev, what a woman Sharon Davis is. I love her. Yeah, well, I agree. She's an amazing woman and does fantastic work. So does J.K. Rowling. Got a lot of texts about Boy George having a go at J.K. Rowling. She must hate men. No, rubbish. I've always quite liked Boy George, but he's out of line on that one. And also, perhaps he shouldn't talk about hating men after what he did to a man and ended up in jail because of it in America. So perhaps people in glass houses and all that, eh, George? Right, shall we go straight to the phones? Let's talk to the brilliant Georgina from London that wants to talk about Meghan Markle. Hi, Georgina.
Hi, Kevin. Well, I've listened to the podcast that she's done so far, and I've got to say, I would rather have poked my eyes out with a blunt spoon. Honestly, they were painful. I mean, give the girl a due. She's trying to earn a few quid, okay? But come on, she's plugging all the time for people to buy stuff. I actually bought the jam, I bought the honey, and I bought the flowers to go on this. Yeah, but I ordered them, and they came. I thought they'd have been in some kind of little, like, fancy little hamper, because it cost a fortune for both the products and also the shipping. So I thought I'd have got a nice little hamper. I didn't.
I've seen the packaging. I must admit, with this show, we've ordered some. You managed to get yours quicker than us. I think ours is coming across the Atlantic as we speak. We got someone in America to get them for us, and they've been shipped over. But the packaging is just sort of cheap and nasty, isn't it?
The whole thing is cheap and nasty. You know, there's nothing that, you know, I'd rather go to Fortnum's and get it, to be honest with you, because at least then you know you're getting quality. Yeah. With this, listen, it's not even jam. Okay, it's not even jam. It's not what I would call a jam.
What does it taste like? Well, I've read that it's kind of rather thin. And
it is very thin. It is a very thin preserve, is what it is. That's what it is. I wouldn't rave on it, but you know, they're giving it a go. But as far as the podcasts are concerned, she's self-absorbed. She's coming over to pally with the people she's interviewing like they have been friends of hers forever, when we know it's not. I don't know any of the people that she's interviewing. I mean, I think up to now they've all been American. So it's not really anyone who would say, oh, right, well, I've seen such and such.
I think they're mostly, Georgina, I think mostly they live in Montecito, so she doesn't have to go too far. And, of course, the criterion for all of them coming on to be interviewed by her is they have to immediately announce how fantastic she is.
Exactly. Well, I was going to say to you, it's all me. Or as long as they're talking about her, Kevin, she's happy. But, you know, we know the venom. We know the venom that this woman has. I saw the Oprah Winfrey interview.
Yeah.
And I know she was full of that much venom. She'd have bit her lip. She'd have killed herself, you know. So at the end of the day, you know, she can try and kid us all she wants. We've seen her true colours. I feel so sorry. I know, how do you say, Harry's a stupid boy, and he is. He needs to go home to his dad. Honestly,
I think you're right. I mean,
she's just using him now, Kevin.
I tend to agree. Just to go back just quickly, Georgina, from what I've heard about the produce that we've bought and from what I've heard from people like you, I think the problem with As Ever, her lifestyle site that flogs all this food, is that people like you, and indeed us, you know, who've bought this stuff first time around, that's one thing. Who's going to go back and buy it round a second time round?
Honey, this is a one-bite cherry. Yeah. You're not going to go back for seconds on this one. And basically, it's just to see what the produce is like, and the fact that you're buying it off Megan. I think with all the hype about it, I just wanted to get them to see what it was like, and to see what the packaging was like, and to see if it was something extra special. I mean,
it's not, is it? It's really cheap looking, and that's I think is a real problem. And also, frankly, Georgina, you know, life's too short to pay $28 for a jar of honey, and that basically is it. Georgina, fantastic to talk to you as always. Keep on calling, I know you will. That's Georgina in London. Let's go to break. When we come back, we'll play a voice note and we'll take more calls, read more of your messages, so stick around.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. A few more messages. Peter Stone says at least Fulham got a good win on Saturday. Well, Peter, I suppose if you call beating the bottom of the league club, Southampton, 2-1, a good win. Well, it was a win, put it that way. I'm going to be schlepping up to Birmingham on Saturday to see Fulham play Aston Villa. Why do I do this? I don't know. But we're bound to win that game. Let me know what you think in Birmingham. Be interesting to see Birmingham, given its problems. Anyway, also Karen says, what the hell happened? I needed my fix of your show. Good to see you back. That's Karen in Woking. Thank you, Karen. And Andrew in Hernhill says, welcome back, Glad you had a nice holiday. My evenings are once again something to look forward to. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's quickly listen to a WhatsApp voice note. This is Steve on the migrants. Take it away, Steve.
Shit thing with them moving in. They're finally moving in and impacting the Champagne socialists, the people who never thought that the influx of the illegal migrants and all the ones who loiter around town centres would actually affect. They're there now. They're impacting them. It was always the realm of the inner cities or the council estates. Now they're branching out and they're impacting house prices and people who voted Labour because it never affected them. So maybe this might be the kick in the shins that actually makes the change that's needed.
It's a really good point, Steve. As I say, we were talking about Datchet, very lovely, very expensive little town near Windsor on the banks of the Thames. A very expensive place to live, millions of pounds the houses cost there. Their hotel in the middle of town, which was a celebrity hangout at one point, George Best used to go there, so obviously serves good booze. That's now an asylum seeker hotel. That is now packed with asylum seekers, and they're a regular sight in the town, and people can't sell their houses. This was a place where apparently houses literally would go within minutes the moment they were on the market. Now they can't sell them for love nor money because migrants have moved in. So that's one very idyllic, expensive stockbroker type town to the west of London. There are similar places all over the country. Steve's making a good point there. Now that the great and the good, the establishment and the well-off and the influential may find themselves living next door to migrants, asylum seekers, we may see something done about this, but don't bet the farm on it. Let's go back to the phone calls and let's talk to Jason in Sheffield. Hi, Jason.
Right, Kev, how you doing, mate?
I'm all right, mate. What would you like to talk about?
What I'd like to say is there's one question that needs to be answered here.
Yep.
In this country, what actually works, what anyone actually does, and what the hell are we playing at?
Go on.
We're not, nothing ever gets done.
You mean the complete dysfunctional nature of this country?
Completely dysfunctional.
I agree with
you. It's dysfunctional and it's gone down the toilet big time in the last, well, I'd say 5 years.
So 5 years, and also there's been a marked decline, I would suggest, since last July the 5th. But every time we talk about Labour, I should make this point very clear, actually, because it sounds often that people like me just stand here having a go at Starmer and Labour are terrible, this government's awful, all of which I completely stand by. Starmer is terrible, this government is awful, as you quite rightly say, completely dysfunctional. But I should stress they're no worse than that shambles, that shower, the Tory government before they got in.
Now, here's the thing you see, Kev. That's where I slightly disagree with you.
Yep.
Whenever the Labour Party need to make a decision about something, they don't make the decision themselves. They start a new quango.
Yeah, I must get a job on one of these quangos. They pay very well.
No, that's what they do. 37 just started to make it, but there's a decision needs to be made.
Yeah. You're right, and exactly right. And they've set up something like, I think it was in the first 6 months or so, they set up something like 60 reviews of various issues and situations. It's all reviews, it's quangos, it's reports, it's committees. Nothing ever gets done. That is the problem. It's a very good point, Jason. And I'm going to go now, but thank you very much for an excellent call. Call me again. Jason in Sheffield there. Let's go to East Sussex now and talk to Amanda on the migrant crisis. Hi, Amanda. How are you doing?
Hey, Kev, long time no see.
Yeah, I was going to say, how are you?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm no longer living in East Sussex. I was telling your producer that I actually moved to Rome, Italy last November.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and the reason being is because of the out-of-control illegal migration in the country, that I could no longer stand it. And from a female perspective, I'd just like to say, for all the females out there, you need to start standing up and speaking out against this agenda, because what is going on here, it's really putting the female population at greater risk of sexual assault, because as we know, most of the assaults in the country now are carried out by foreigners from foreign lands. So that's a fact. And obviously a lot of them probably are migrants. Let's just be honest about it. And the other thing that worries me, and the other reason I left, is because the way I see it, and you know me quite well now, that I've got a very conservative viewpoint, which I'm proud of, by the way, and I am frightened for our country, Kev, because I see, as that gentleman just said to you, the decline has been so rapid in the last 5 years that I see now what is going on with this Labour Party. What they're doing is what Biden tried to do in the States before he got kicked out of office. They're importing potential voters.
Yes,
that is what they are doing.
Yeah.
They want to stay in power. The only way they can do that is by importing new voters and by giving them free housing, free this, free that. They can guarantee that these migrants will vote for them. There's even an MP today, a Liberal Democrat MP, who's even started that conversation about why shouldn't the migrant population in the country, in the UK, be allowed to vote.
Yeah. That plus 16
out there.
That plus 16-year-olds. Keir Starmer thinks they're all going to vote for him. I got bad news for him there. I don't think they will. So just before you go, Amanda, why Rome? How come you ended up there?
Well, I'm a Catholic, for one thing.
It's quite big there in Rome, isn't it? That.
Yeah.
Seriously, go on.
I'm also very disturbed about the decline in Christianity in our country. That really worries me as well, because of the fact, we've got so many new mosques being built across the country. That frightens the hell out of me. And I just can't live there anymore, Kev. I just can't.
What a shame. Keep calling in, Amanda. And I think Rome's one of the great cities. I love Rome. So enjoy your new life there, and I don't blame you at all. Amanda, I was about to say from East Sussex, but from Rome there. Let's go to break, and when we come back, we'll talk to Debbie from Essex. So stick around.
I can show you this graph, maybe.
Yeah.
You see that? So the blue is men, the red is the women.
Right.
And on this side here, the left-hand side, there's the children. So it's age on the bottom. Anyhow, so there's
so very small numbers, in other words.
34% women and children were killed in over 4 months in Khan Yunis.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Just go back to the phones in just a second. But Amy Headley Amy in Sunderland has sent me a message saying there's an 11. This is after what Sharon Davis said about a friend of hers whose kid is in a classroom where one of the pupils identifies as a cat, and the teachers have organised a litter tray for the girl at the back of the class. I mean, what's going on? And Amy says there's an 11-year-old girl in my son's year at junior school who identifies as a cat. And I'm so glad my son isn't in her class anymore, because I would not put up with the teacher allowing it. Yeah, I mean, that's it. Parents have got to stop teachers letting kids do this. It's ridiculous. Parents should make a stand. Look, I don't want my kid in a classroom with some kids saying they're a cat or a mushroom or a horse or whatever. Teachers have got to stop this is an 11-year-old kid. Just tell that kid they're a bit stupid and they're not a cat and they can't have a litter tray. You know, for God's sake, it's not rocket science, is it? That's how you run a school. You discipline the kids. And when they're being stupid, you tell them and you stop them being stupid. There you go, I've solved that problem. Good, this show, isn't it? Right, let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Debbie in Essex. Hello, Debbie.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm very, very well.
Missed you over the last week.
Oh, well, I'm back now, so you're stuck with me now. You want to talk about Sadiq Khan?
I do. I don't know if you've seen his little online post that he's put out today, but it's
something about hate crime, isn't it, or something?
Can I actually read this out to you? It's not very long. It's really
go on, yeah, go for it, yeah.
Right, so it says, the Southport disorder and the chilling attacks that followed shocked our nation and showed how fast and false the information is on our social media. He then goes to say...
What's this got to do with London? What's this got to do with running London, do you think, Debbie?
I have got absolutely no idea. He then goes on to say he's investing £875,000, which is part of a record of £15.9 million in the community for the project to tackle hate crime, the strength of London, and all of the hate crime that's all going on now.
Yeah, so he spent 16 million quid already trying to tackle the problem of hate crime, and now he's going to invest another £875,000 into a programme aimed at tackling hate crime. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's beyond ridiculous.
Yeah, honestly.
Something's not being done about this.
What's that called? Well, you can't stop the guy. The guy, you know, he's all powerful in his little enclave, which is London. There's nothing much we can do about it. But it's what has this got to do with governing London? The man is a disaster, a total disaster. Debbie, I've got to move on because the show's nearly over, but excellent call. Thank you for alerting me to that, and keep in touch. Debbie from Essex there. And let's go, finally, what better way to bring down the curtain on another triumphant show than by talking to London's greatest resident, Tarquin. Hi, Tarquin.
Lord O'Sullivan, welcome home. Welcome home, sir.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
We really did miss you. We really did. Honestly, I mean, it was good who stood in, and Alex is obviously great, but nobody beats the great Kevin O'Sullivan.
I mean, how can I argue with you? Who could argue with that? What do you want to say, mate? Go on.
What? Right. You're a journo, right? With a bit of like a sort of like layman's law that one knows about these things. In 2016, did we or did we not, as a country, the will of the people spoke? We said, ending it. We're out of this goddamn forsaken club of the EU. We're out.
Yep.
And implicit in that removal, that public, that mandate that is sovereignty, as our voice of sovereignty, implicit in that was the vote that the borders has no bearing on the fact that we as the British people, we took back control, end of. So anything that's happened subsequently in the last 8 to 9 years, Kev, is that these people are committing misprision of treason. They should all be rounded up, arrested, and we should slam them borders shut and boot these people out right now. It's the law. It's the English law.
I mean, I agree with you, but we have a government that is not committed to Brexit and is not committed to guarding our border, guarding our sovereign borders. So we have a problem with our government. That's what it is. Tarquin, excellent call as always. Got to move on because the show's nearly over. Thank you very much, mate. Let's talk again very soon. And in the studio, it's Petri Hoskin. How are you?
I'm good. How was your holiday?
It was very, very nice, very sunny.
You're looking very tanned.
I got burnt. It's really weird. I didn't take any suntan lotion. Not. It was Cornwall, for God's sake. But,
it's cool. And the sun, the British sun doesn't burn. That's what we all think.
Well, it kind of does.
It kind of does, though. Yeah, kind of does.
What's coming up in your show?
Right. To start with, we're going to be looking at the really important Canadian elections that are happening right now. Mark Carney, of course, a Liberal, and he was 25 points behind before, well, the Liberals were when Trudeau was in. Conservatives, though, led by Pierre Poilievre, it looks like it's very tight, actually, but it will make a massive
Do you know what I find interesting is the way that Carney has basically said to Trudeau, stick away from me.
Keep away.
Carney doesn't want to be seen anywhere near Justin Trudeau.
Well, because the Liberals have been in for 10 years and they've
He's like sclerotic. He's an image of...
so I think the Canadians are voting on Trump. Actually, they're voting on whether they want to be the 51st state or not.
That's interesting,
and with Carney there, it looks like they think he's going to be a stronger leader against Trump compared to Poilievre.
And are the Canadians